Good evening. Welcome to the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, September 17th. We convened at 5:15 for an executive session in which we took no action. And at the time, I asked John whether the meeting was properly warned.
Yes, Daniel, it was.
And it was. So that's wonderful. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from September 3rd, 2024. Do I have a motion? Richard.
Move we approve the minutes of.
Richard has made a motion to approve the minutes of September 3rd, 2024. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. Next order of business is Chair's remarks, and that's me. So let's see what I have to remark upon today. It's nice to see you all here, and if you've never been here before, thank you for coming. I appreciate your participation. That also includes the many folks on Zoom. I wanted to kind of remind folks about some of the ways in which we participate in this meeting. So if you came in the room physically, there's a sign-in sheet just by the door. You could sign in. That helps with our historical record of this meeting. We do have time limits on speakers. I keep a sort of like loose-ish hand on the time limit, but it's 3 minutes. I will alert you when you are kind of running out of time, and I will try to be like kind of aware of whether it feels like you're in the middle of wrapping up, and if so, I might grant you a little bit extra time. If you're going to go way past it, I'll probably just ask you to bring it to a close. The reason why we have time limits is to allow as many people as possible to participate and to have some level of kind of equity. And so I will be doing that. In terms of who gets to speak, you need to be recognized. So to be recognized, all you've got to do is raise your hand. And then I will do my best to kind of like keep track of who I'm recognizing. So I'll usually say like, we're going to hear from you, and then this person, and then I'll probably go back and try again. In terms of decorum, I know that you are all people with delightful decorum, and we will keep this meeting civil, respectful. And so one of the ways that manifests is, whoever's speaking, we're going to listen to them, whether we agree with them, disagree with them, and whatever they say, provided that it is also respectful in tone, shouldn't get any kind of response like applause or booing. This is not the panto. And so, by not doing that, we will keep things pretty kind of calm in here. The official kind of term for this kind of meeting is a limited public forum. What that means is, really, this is a meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard that takes place in public. We may only meet in public to take action. And so it's not exactly a full public forum where like there is no time limit and it's just we want to hear from everybody until we're done. We need to hear from people because your voices help us make decisions. They inform us, they educate us. But we also need to kind of balance that with a need for like taking action on our agenda items tonight. And then let's see, what else? Who gets to speak and in what order? So like we will always try and have everyone who's raised their hand be heard as much as possible. If you want to speak for a second time, really be mindful of other people who wish to speak. And then furthermore, like, I would like to try and balance viewpoints. It's kind of hard to predict exactly what somebody's going to say, but you can kind of help me by that and, really listening to what people are speaking. And if what they've said is something that is exactly the same as what you want to say, maybe leave that space for somebody else who's got a different viewpoint so that we can hear as much as possible. And that's about it, I guess, As we go through the meeting, I'll sort of remind folks about some of these points, and we'll try our best to have a great meeting. Okay? So next up, we got manager's comments.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. I wanted to let the board know that I was invited to attend a press conference tomorrow in Montpelier a number of the bigger towns with motel programs, shelters, high levels of social services have been discussing the concerns about ending of the motel program, which is going to start to go down this week and next week. My intention at this press conference is to convey your concerns about municipal revenue enhancement, one of the issues that we've been discussing. So that's what I'll be focused on. If you have any questions, let me know about that. The second thing I wanted to mention is that it's our understanding that the demolition of the Sportsman's Lounge is delayed until asbestos is removed in November. Just an update on that. The state is mailing ballots to all active registered voters during the week of September 23rd for the November 5th general election. You don't need to request a ballot for the November general election unless you need it mailed to a different address than's on file with the town. If you don't receive your ballot by October 7th, please reach out to the town clerk's office. The election will be held on November 5th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the American Legion, 32 Linden Street. And please note that for all other elections, you must still request an absentee ballot if you wish to have one issued. The Brattleboro Human Services Committee FY26 application and updated policies and procedures will be out tomorrow on September 18th. The application, you'll be able to find that at the town website under the area that is the Human Services Review Committee, or people can pick up a copy of that application and policies and procedures at the town manager's office. Finally, it came to my attention this week that some people are not aware that they can get the select board agendas emailed to them as they're published. And so I asked that we update on the website how people can do that and get on the email distribution. The distribution list is for all agendas and press releases that the town manager's office issued, but it tends to be about 5 to 10 emails a month. But if people want to know like what's coming down the road, that's a good way to kind of know what the select board is going to be talking about. And so you can contact the town manager's office if you wish to be on that distribution list. And that's what I have.
Great.
Tonight.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Other select board members with comments and or committee reports?
No, thank you.
France?
Thank you, Daniel. I have two items to bring to people's attention. The first comes from the Charter Review Commission, and I've been asked to publicize the following information, which I'll just read out loud here. We'd like everyone to know that on October 10th and October 17th, the Charter Revision Commission will be talking about representative town meeting. The purpose of the discussion is to decide if we'll recommend any changes to the RTM system of government. Both meetings, October 10th and 17th, will take place at 6:15 in the Select Board meeting room and be available on Zoom. The link, along with the agenda, can be found on the Charter Revision Commission page of the town website. So everyone's invited to participate in a discussion of the future of representative town meeting. So the other item is that from time to time I've mentioned my availability to meet with the public during office hours, which are typically Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30 and Friday from 8 to 10 in the morning. And I've been doing that at the Works Cafe on Main Street. There's going to be a change of venue. A week from tomorrow, my office hours will take place in the meeting room at the library and on the third floor of the library. The reason for this is that there's been so much interest recently in various issues, notably community safety, and requests for extra time to discuss this with the community. I don't know how many people exactly would want to show up for that event, but I decided that if people do want to come to my office hours, I needed potentially a bigger place. So a week from tomorrow, Wednesday, 4:30 at the library, come and talk to whoever's there about whatever your concerns are. Thank you.
Great. Other board members? Okay. So the next item on our agenda is public participation. So this is for people to speak about items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you had something you wanted to say about public safety, save it for later. If you had something to say about, I don't know, trash, this would be a great time. So if you'd like to be recognized to speak at this point, all you need to do is raise your hand. That includes folks on Zoom. And then I'll ask you to come up and state your name and where you live. And then you can have up to 3 minutes to tell us what you need to tell us. Okay, so I saw a hand just behind Spencer there. So with the green, what are we calling that, bandana? No.
A wrap.
Okay, a wrap, very good. So yeah, if you'd like to come up to the microphone.
My name is Ken Labby. I live on Lower Canal Street.
Okay.
Across from the old Sportsman's Lounge. There's a few things I wanted to spit out real quick so I can get everything in.
Yeah.
In the course of the day's time, if I sit out on my front porch, I could probably watch 8 or 10 drug deals. And nothing's getting done about it.
Ken, we have like quite a few items about public safety tonight. We have quite a few items about public safety. Is that what you want to speak about?
Well, it all boils into one.
Okay.
Because we have so many homeless in this town. They all congregate over in that little park, and there's all kinds of drug deals going on, and they crash.
So we have
out there.
a downtown safety action plan item. This is probably a really good comment for them.
But where they're camping out, they're taking their trash and they're throwing it over the bank, and if you walked up to that fence, you can't see it when you're driving by.
Yeah.
But if you walked up to that fence and looked over, it's nothing but a city dump down there.
Okay.
That trash
Thanks,
is going to wind up in our waterways.
Okay.
It's because of the homelessness.
Okay.
It's because of the drug
So
addiction.
Ken, we've got an item coming up called the Finance and the Downtown Safety Action Plan, and these comments might be relevant then. Okay? Thank you.
Nothing's getting done about it.
Okay. All right. Anyone else that would like to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Seeing none. The next item is the consent agenda. John, if you'd like to walk us through what is on that.
Sure thing, Daniel. Just a quick summary. There's 4 items on the consent agenda tonight. If you approve this agenda, you'll be authorizing the Planning Services Department to apply for a state municipal energy resilience program grant of up to $500,000 to make energy efficiency and sustainability improvements to the Gibson Aiken Center. You will also be ratifying a decision to repair a wastewater pump that failed since your last meeting at the Brook Wastewater Station on Old Guilford Road for a cost of $35,170.20 from the FY25 Utilities operating budget. You will be approving a parade permit for the Brattleboro Halloween Parade for the Rec and Parks Department Thursday, October 31st from 6 to 6:15 p.m., and that will run from the Co-op up Main Street and ending at the Gibson Aiken Center. And finally, you'll be supporting staff's pre-application for 5 federally funded FEMA hazard mitigation grant program projects, including potential property buyouts at 131 William Street and 234 Elliott Street. If the state agrees these projects are eligible, staff would return to request authorization from the Select Board to submit grant applications for the eligible projects.
Great. Thanks, John. Would anybody from the Select Board like to pull one of those items for discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Liz?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Great, thank you. Liz has made a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thus, it is accepted. Okay, so our first item of business tonight is old business. We have a second reading of the Acceptable Community Conduct Ordinance, which is Chapter 13 in our Book of Ordinances. And John is going to walk us through this.
Yep. So this ordinance is part of the Select Board's community safety agenda to address public health and public safety in Brattleboro. You have about 13 initiatives that you're working on, which hopefully all together are going to start to make a good influence on some of the challenges you've been hearing about in town. Among these initiatives are state legislative reforms, the Downtown Safety Action Plan, which we'll also talk about this evening, a messaging campaign also on your agenda tonight, the work with One Brattleboro, the collaborative development that's come out of the Jim Baker Public Safety Enhancement Team work, the police department's data project, the safety fair, and several other initiatives like that. The Safety Zones Ordinance was a Select Board 2024-2026 priority. It was one of 3 priorities that the board gave us for the year to focus on, along with everything else that we're doing, but to make sure that we address those. So this ordinance is addressing your priority from the retreat. In fact, this topic has been discussed at 4 meetings of the Select Board this year, and tonight is the 5th conversation about it. At the last meeting you had on this, September 3rd, board members and members of the public provided feedback on a first reading of a draft ordinance, and that ordinance would set out community standards in certain areas and at certain properties and establish fines and no trespass restrictions for violations of those standards. During that meeting on September 3rd, board members and the public focused on several specific proposed prohibited behaviors such as solicitation, intoxication, smoking and vaping, and leaving personal belongings attended. There was discussion about the 200-foot radius around properties frequented by youth that was part of the first reading, and some maps were included in your backup materials for this second reading that shows examples of that 200-foot radius and how that would be addressed both kind of downtown-wide and then focused in on Flat Street. We can bring those maps up if it's helpful at all to the board, but they are in the packet at page 68 and 69. Since that meeting on September 3rd, staff has worked with the town attorney, Bob Fisher, who's here tonight, to address concerns with the draft ordinance raised at the first reading. In total, we made 15 major changes to that first reading, and there's a red line copy, strikeout copy of that first ordinance with the changes in the second reading here on page 70 of the backup material. So there are also some copies up at the table there if anyone doesn't have that or hasn't seen that. Those 15 major changes included things like we made some terminology more consistent throughout the ordinance. We added some definitions to section 13.410, including things like drug paraphernalia, management agreement, and restoration plan to clarify those terms. The behavior of solicitation, as discussed at the last meeting, was removed. Both from the location section as well as the prohibited behavior section. So solicitation for private benefit is no longer a prohibited behavior in this ordinance. Also, there was clarification under prohibited behaviors regarding illicit drugs and cannabis establishments as an exception. There was refinement, again, in that same section, 13.420, of the terms related to intoxication. You had some conversation about that last time, and that definition was further clarified. Smoking or vaping, which you talked a lot about with the public last time, was removed from section 13.420 prohibited behaviors. So smoking and vaping would now be allowed anywhere in these areas. Also, likewise, leaving personal belongings unattended was removed from prohibited behavior, so people can leave their stuff around. That would not be addressed by this ordinance. Under section 13.430, under enforcement, there was a clarification made by what process the municipal tickets would be appealed, and that would be through the Vermont Judicial Bureau. That was also a topic of conversation at your last meeting, so we clarified there. On the section 13440, also another part of the ordinance that you talked about a fair amount last time, was a section that had been called nuisance properties. The staff had a conversation with a number of people potentially affected by this. That section has been retermed high response properties, and a number of clarifications were made to that. First of all, there was a sense that I believe that the 4 responses over the course of a year was maybe too low a burden. So we've reconsidered and proposed here that it be 4 responses over a 3-month period, which would equate to a 4 times that amount. So in other words, it would be 12 responses over the course of the year before this clause could potentially come into play for a property owner. Also, it was clarified that police responses originated by the property owner or landlord would not count against the response need. Also, domestic violence related calls would not count against the response need. So people would not need to hesitate in any domestic violence scenario from calling the police department, or if it was a code violation, making a code violation in relation to a domestic violence incident. Quality of life or safety related offenses would, however. Another clarification in section 13440, the high response properties, is the property owner could demonstrate extenuating circumstances as a reason to hold off on the designation of their property as a high response property. Again, having another off-ramp, easy off-ramp, if there was a legitimate reason that the police were getting called or the code enforcement was getting called. Finally, there was included the original intent, but clarifying that on offering a collaborative meeting with a potential high response property owner to discuss the development of a management agreement as part of the notification letter when that goes out. So that would be the first step before any fines or anything else would be issued. This would be about getting a conversation about what can the town do to work with a property owner to make things better and reduce the overall expense to the taxpayer of police responding to particular properties. This ordinance, we believe this second draft of the ordinance will accomplish a number of the Select Board's policy goals on several fronts, improving conditions in the downtown area as well as in neighborhoods around Brattleboro. It would provide the newly established Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team with additional tools to help establish healthy boundaries in places where behaviors are particularly impacting significant numbers of people in the community. This ordinance is about harm reduction and accountability for the entire community. It's addressing a significant and persistent request that we've had from many people in the community, and that is what I have tonight on that. We're happy to answer any questions or step through the red line if you have any questions on any of that or thoughts on how this could be improved.
Great. Thank you, John. So folks who are kind of coming in, there's maybe some seats available in that back room there. There's a couple of seats available still in here. You're also welcome to stand there if you want. I'm just letting you know that there are some seats available. And if you would like to see a copy of the ordinance and don't currently have one, there were some on the table. Maybe our town attorney is working the photocopier. So that's value for money right there. So folks, we're going to have the select board kind of consider this for a little bit, and then we're going to hear from the public, and then we'll probably come back to the board for some further consideration and maybe some action. We'll see what the board's pleasure is. So select board, questions or comments on John's presentation?
Shall I make a motion?
Yes, if you want to, yeah.
I move to adopt the changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Article 9, Acceptable Community Conduct, Section 13-400 through 13-440 as presented.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to it?
I would.
Yeah.
Actually, the most important part that well, first of all, I just want to say that this is part of a set of issues and actions that the select board and the town has devised to address conditions downtown, which we've heard so much from the public about. And I think that we need to give all of these issues a chance to work, and for all of us to work together. And I've heard a lot of comments about what this ordinance does and doesn't do, but I bring to your attention the section of 13-430, which really talks about how there's an opportunity and a reasonable amount of time to address the underlying conduct. And I just think that people need to understand.
Page number for that?
Yes, it's on page 76 of 192.
Thank you.
And it really speaks to the underlying purpose here is to give people an opportunity to address their own conduct and to change their conduct before any fines or waivers or anything like that are meted out. And I think that we need to understand that also part of that process is to work with these individuals with most likely complex needs to see if there's a social service or that can help them. And so that is the purpose, and it fits with all of the other actions that the municipality has taken, and the fines and so forth are for people who continue to behave in a manner that is not cooperative. So that's what I'd like to say.
Okay, thank you. Other board members, comments or questions? Richard?
I appreciate the effort that's gone into making all the changes to this ordinance. It's a reaction to people's concerns in the community. This is the document that has makes the effort to try to solve some problems. The question in my mind is, will it work or will it not work? And I've been trying to look at this ordinance from as many different perspectives as I can, because our community, it's diverse, and we have a lot of different opinions about it. There's been a lot of public discussion about this issue over the last few weeks, and it's been very helpful to hear what people have had to say about this ordinance. I want to inform my decision about the ordinance based on 45 years of working in the human service area in this particular town, in this community, which I have done. And although I've never been homeless and I've never, as far as I know, exhibited any of the behaviors that are addressed in this ordinance, I think I do have a pretty good sense of how things might play out if this ordinance were in effect. And not 100%, but to a large degree, I feel like, and I've been going back and forth on this for a number of weeks. But is it really going to make a difference? And I think that's something people are concerned about. Are we marginalizing a certain part of the population? Are we attacking a symptom and not dealing with the problem itself? I mean, these are all questions that have been floating around, and I think I'm not the only one that has been feeling this way. But I think that what the police department has done in the last few weeks in terms of increased presence, they've been more visible in the streets. I've heard excellent reports about areas being cleaned up, about surveillance in areas that have been trouble spots, these so-called zones. We have 5 new recruits that are being used right now, I guess, in the police department as part of Chief Hardy's plan to move things along and to try to address everybody's concerns. I think the police department is very sensitive to people's needs and issues. So what I feel at this point is that I would rather put this ordinance on hold and not adopt it now. I don't want to trash it. I don't want to say that it's no good. I don't want to do that. But what I would like to see is, I would like to give the police department and the officers and also the other people that are not full-fledged officers, part of that team, to have a reasonable amount of time to do what they are doing and to see how that is going to play out. I think even though these are all different pieces, they don't have to be thrown all out at the same time. I think that's too much, and we may regret it if we try to do too much at one time. So, and if we do everything at one time, we won't really know which piece was effective. You know, it's sort of like a scientific principle. When you do a scientific experiment, you to eliminate things, you do one piece at a time. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying this is something we need to get rid of or that it's a bad thing. All I'm saying is that I can't, in good conscience, vote for this to be operationalized now. I want to give the police department time, and I want to give the community time to adjust to what the police department is doing and to see if there is actually a change in people's perceptions of safety and if there is actual change in the numbers of incidents as recorded by the police department. So I don't want to belabor the point, but, you know, I just, in good conscience, I can't vote for this right now.
Thanks, Richard. Peter?
Yeah, so I'm going to push against everything you just said, all right, respectfully. And to say that, first and foremost, there is not a person sitting at this table that is trying to criminalize poverty or criminalize being homeless or having a mental illness is not illegal, nor is being homeless. What we are attacking, what we are going after are behaviors that we are exhibiting in our downtown. All right, those behaviors are happening now. Kicking the can further down the road does not help this situation. We will not gain any ground if we just wait and see what works. If you show up to a house fire, you know you have to dump water on the entire house, not just the part where it started. The entire house needs to have water dumped on it. So waiting another 2 weeks, fine. Waiting 3 months, not fine. Okay, I have had in excess of 500 conversations on this issue. All right, and probably in the last 2 days, 20. Of those people, and I wish more of those people would show up in support of what we are trying to accomplish. We are not trying to demonize anybody. We are trying to get our arms around an increased problem in our downtown that are making our people, our retailers, the people who want to come into our downtown and shop, making them feel unsafe. Whether it's founded or unfounded, regardless of what petitions come in or not, I can tell you that the problem is here. It's happening right now. And by waiting, by deferring this and kicking the can down the road continually, which is something we as a community tend to do over and over and over again, is not helpful. It is not going to improve this situation. If we wait and have another 6 months of conversations and meetings, guess what? We're right here talking about this one more time. All right? I want to get my arms around this. I want to get people the help that they need. I'm not trying not to help people. I will bend over backwards to help anybody who wants to be helped. Sometimes I think Christine Allen was up here a couple of weeks ago and said sometimes you just need a swift kick in the ass to get moving. So maybe that's where we're at. I wish I didn't. I wish we weren't, but that's where we're at. So by deferring and delaying and talking about it some more and having a couple of more meetings about this thing is not going to change the situation and where we are now. We have to sort of stand up, do this hard and adult thing, and roll it all out.
Thanks, Peter. And so the folks who arrived late, I'm going to just kind of clue you in on what everybody else heard earlier. We're not going to applaud because we're also not going to boo. We're just simply going to listen respectfully to one another. So thank you. Franz, would you like to say something?
Indeed, I would. Thank you, Daniel. So I'm going to repeat some things I've said before. I think the main approach I've been taking is a three-pronged approach. The first prong is that we need to provide adequate social services for the town, and that includes for the people who are unhoused in the downtown, et cetera. I think we've done a pretty good job on that. I think there's some places we could do better. The second is we need a shared understanding of what acceptable behavior in this town is, and there's various ways to establish that shared understanding, some of which we'll be talking about later in this meeting. But, we kind of just need as part of our culture. Brattleboro, these are things we do, these are things we don't do. And the more that's an understood rather than an enforced vision that we share, the better. But the third part is that in situations where that shared understanding breaks down and people are, for whatever reason, incapable of adhering to reasonable standards of behavior, I think we do need compassionate and effective law enforcement so that the standards, there's a clear message that this isn't just do whatever you want in this town. There are things that we expect people to do, and we're willing to take the steps to see that that's how things go. It's called law enforcement, and I'm in favor of doing that in a really good way, which fortunately we have been doing in Brattleboro. I'd also like to point out that this is a both-and world. It's not an either-or world. We don't have to choose between showing people compassion and enforcing every little possible punitive measure that's available. You can have adequate social services and you can have law enforcement. And that's what I'd be arguing for. We don't have to choose between those two things. I would ask people, especially the ones who have said that they don't support the ordinance as it's currently written, how carefully have you read it? Because it's just filled with opportunities for people to correct, self-correct, correct with guidance, get back into the swing of things without any kind of meaningful punishment. So that's one of the things I like about this ordinance the best, is that it contains the off-ramps that even if you've been given a ticket or you've been given some kind of a citation, there are still ways for you to correct that without any monetary fine, without any other restriction on your activities. So that's built in again and again and again into the ordinance, and I think people need to realize that. There's been talk about an us versus them perspective that is built into this ordinance, and I disagree with that. I don't think there's any us versus them. You can choose to look at it that way if you want, but I don't think it's actually in there. I think it's very much a community discussion in which everybody's in it together. And I think that to say that this criminalizes something or creates divisiveness, I don't agree with that. One of the criticisms leveled, I think, that's really misplaced is the idea that certain segments of our population are incapable, for whatever reason, of adhering to acceptable standards of behavior. That, because of past events, poverty, there's a number of explanations. And I don't mean to denigrate those explanations for people's behavior, but the idea that they have rendered people incapable of change, I think, it's condescending, almost infantilizing. And I think that expecting people to do better is a very positive approach. And I've seen it work on the streets when I've walked around with our police officers, and they've made comments to somebody about, hey, can you pick up that trash? And the people are happy to do it. People don't feel compelled to display their worst behavior. They actually want to do better. And if we deliver the messages on how to do better, I think for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, people will go along with that improved outlook on our life together. There's one thing, though, where I'm a little hesitant, and it almost bridges the gap between what Peter and Richard said. Several of the people who sent in comments are people who are very much involved in delivering services to elements in town that need specific services, whether it's mental health or addiction services, et cetera. And there have been a few of those people whose opinions I really respect who said, this is going too fast, that people who are involved in trying to help things have not had an adequate chance to weigh in and to look at, well, how's this actually going to work in practice? Because, for me, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, and we're going to see how this works. But before we get there, I would like to hear more from the people who are really dealing with all this day to day, what they see as potential problems here that I may not have thought of. So I would feel uncomfortable approving this tonight, but I would think in another couple of weeks I'd be very ready to vote in favor of it, having heard from some of the people who've said, hey, pump the brakes a little bit here. I'd be willing to give those people a chance to chime in and say what they think as well. So that's kind of where I've fallen on this. I like the ordinance. I think it's going to do good things for the town, but I'm willing to wait 2 weeks to hear more feedback from, especially from people who are really integrally involved in the service delivery models that we're proposing.
Okay, thanks, Franz. Okay, so I'm going to say something that's really unpopular because I'm not going to get on my soapbox right now. I'm actually going to get into the weeds with this ordinance because it's a second read-in and there's still opportunity for some feedback. Folks who want to follow along, I'm going to first of all take a look at page 73, section 2 on that page. So one of the locations that's sort of description of a location that's named here is to encourage a setting that promotes the handling of money, and I'm mostly going to be directing questions, I guess, at John and Bob. To encourage a setting that promotes the handling of money without fear of theft or assault. Solicitation was removed and was replaced with the word assault. Can somebody please describe for me, actually, can the town attorney please describe for me what that means?
So with regard to assault, the elements of assault is either attempting to cause bodily injury or an attempt to put another in fear of imminent serious bodily injury. That second one is a subjective standard, and the courts still allow the notion that even if a person doesn't have the ability to carry through with something, that can still place you in fear of that serious or imminent bodily injury, even if it's a bluff. So again, that's a subjective standard. But those are the elements of an assault.
Okay. Right, thank you. On page 74, so we're looking here at prohibited behaviors. I will say that the Class A prohibited behaviors are all behaviors that should concern anyone. whether you're in favor of this ordinance or not. These are things that, include violence and other, unsavory things in our community, many of which are already sort of worked on by our police department, right? The Class B behaviors, I think, is where I would rather spend more of my time. And so number 3, we're talking about urination and defecation. Obviously, not things that we want to see happening out in public in our community. And also, I think that there is still insufficient resources in the community for people to be able to, do those things in private. And, maybe I'm at the risk of being a little not germane here. I do think that the board needs to come back to the idea of public bathrooms and have that be discussed on an agenda in future. So I would like that noted for the record. We did have a proposal last year, and that did not pass, unfortunately. Number 5 says, this is a prohibited behavior, interfering with the free passage of people on a sidewalk, public street, parking area, facility entrance, or hallway. I actually do fear that this piece of the ordinance could potentially be sort of one of the things that targets folks without shelter, and I would prefer that it is removed. Page 76. We're in sort of the back end of penalties. And I just want to kind of clarify some of this stuff. I've read this pretty closely, obviously, a couple of times, and it's gone through a couple of iterations. So I want to make sure that everyone in the public is clear about how this would actually play out. So we're talking here about penalties. So say, for example, somebody let's say somebody was publicly intoxicated. They were confronted by somebody with the authority to do so, and they were asked, hey, can you not be publicly intoxicated here? Would you mind, going elsewhere? And if the person said no, they could then potentially be ticketed with and this is what I just want to get clarity about this. So they could be ticketed with a potential fine of $50 and would be issued a notice against trespass, or is that at the judgment of the person issuing the ticket?
The latter.
Okay, so that person has a conversation with somebody, they choose not to change their behavior, and then they will be on the receiving end of a ticket that could be a fine or a trespass. Which would come first?
I believe the sense that it would be enforced would be first with a no trespass, which would retain the ability of the town to work through a restoration plan with that person.
Okay.
If they were not, if they were not receptive to working through a restoration plan, and they continued to exhibit the behavior in the particular area, then it could go further to a fine or something like that. So.
Okay.
Yep.
And so the way to resolve this notice against trespass is to engage in a restoration plan of some kind, which is described on the bottom of page 78 and the bottom of 77 and top of 78. And one of the things that is mentioned in there is completing a restorative justice process. I would like to add to that entering into or completing a restorative justice process. I do not know how quickly one can complete a restorative justice process and how accessible that is to everybody. So if somebody showed, genuine kind of intent has entered into a process, then I think that should be seen as effort on their part. Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you, John. Going back to, sorry, I can't read my own notes here. Page 77, item C. So this is where this is a civil ticket, civil violation. And so how I understand it is as follows. Once the notice against trespass has been issued, if somebody then violates that trespass, that could then become a criminal violation, and there's a statute cited here. Mm-hmm. Bob, could you speak to like what the penalties are for that criminal violation?
So with regard to that, you're correct that that would be a criminal violation if they violate the notice against trespass. And then, sorry, I had that right here. With that, the person, if it's a misdemeanor, it is imprisoned for not more than 3 months or fined not more than $500 or both. So that is the current penalty under the criminal state statute. From experience, I can tell you most unlawful trespasses don't, unless it's extremely repeat offenders or connected with other things, don't see prison terms. It's usually fines and or probation, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Page 79, we're in the bit here about high response properties, A1. So this was changed quite substantially from the standard being 4 calls within 12 months to 4 calls within 3 months. And that if someone other than the property owner or landlord is calling. So there are some facilities, sites in our community where staff need to call police on a fairly regular basis. I'm thinking the hospital, I'm thinking the groundworks drop-in site. And the person who's calling from those facilities is neither the property owner nor the landlord. And I would want there to be something in there to stipulate that, like, that kind of call would not result in penalties, because I would not want those people to feel disinclined to call.
Would you then categorize that as an institutional use? Or
sure, yeah, maybe something like that. Or like I had like staff person or something, you know, and John and I spoke about this briefly and he thought maybe it would be understood. I just want to be clear about it.
Yeah, I think it would be understood, but if it would help to add other than the property owner or designee, and then if it was somebody that the property owner employed or
yes,
you know,
designee
that
would
could
probably
maybe clarify on your point, Daniel? Or?
Yeah, okay. that would be fine. And then, you know, in a more policy kind of sense, I do wonder about the potential for landlord retaliation for rental properties. And I know many of the landlords in our community would not do that. But I've also experienced people who have been issued an eviction notice for say a non-payment of rent, which is a perfectly normal circumstance, and then even after paying that rent, are then issued a subsequent no-cause eviction, which there's really nothing much to be done about that. And so I would worry, we can't really say whether this will or will not happen, but it's a concern of mine that there could be retaliation in that way. So I just want to name that. And then I think the final kind of nuts and bolts question I have is on page 80 in section E. I was a little confused by this. And so these are the penalties. And so if a property, you know, has X many calls to it and they fail to enter into a collaborative kind of management agreement, or they're not exempt, then they can be on the hook for penalties of up to $800 per offense or violation. And I wanted to get clear that like a violation is when you have 4 calls within 3 months. It's not like that is one violation, correct? I might not be being clear.
Could you ask that again?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a violation would be when a property has 4 calls to the police department within a 3-month period and the owner does not resolve it through like a management agreement or some other kind of mitigating circumstance, they would then receive a ticket of up to $800, and that up to would be determined by like the cost of public safety response to that address.
Correct, yeah, for those 4 responses.
Okay.
Or any additional ones beyond that.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
It's really, just to jump in on that if I may,
Yeah.
it's really for additional ones because under C3, we would be notifying the property owner of the intent to impose charges, and it talks about for each subsequent response or valid complaint until the property no longer meets that definition. So
Okay.
there's notice to the property owner of, hey, we've got a problem here. You've been notified that you're a high response property. Then once we see anything more, that's an offense for which that $800 penalty could be imposed.
Okay.
And of course, then there's a 2/3 waiver fee. If they pay that, they can pay 2/3 of that $800, and not as an incentive to pay a lower amount.
Okay, fine. I'm going to stop there for now. And Liz, you had some things to say?
Thank you. I would strongly advocate to my colleagues that this isn't something that we need further delay. I think we need to understand the context of what's going on in Brattleboro and across the state with regard to the motel program. And I believe that we need to give our police department all the tools that they would require to establish order and have that done now, because there will be most likely more people living on the streets of Brattleboro in the next several weeks because of the reduction in people in the motel program. And I would hope that, through this process and all the other 13 points that are in this plan, that people will get the services that they need. But just in case, we need the police need all the tools in their toolbox to establish order and to maintain order and help these people with carrots and a very flexible stick.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from the public. And so I will remind folks that I'm going to give you up to 3 minutes. I'll remind folks that we're not going to applaud or boo any contributions, that we'll listen respectfully. And folks who are on Zoom, just know that the screen is far away and my eyes are not that good. And so I will do my very best to recognize you. Let's start in the room. Libby in the back. Actually, Ava, you want to go first? Okay. And so, if folks could state their name, where they are from, and then have up to 3 minutes.
Yep. My name is Ava. I live in Westminster West, but I work in Brattleboro. You all heard from me this week with emails, so I appreciate, sounds like some of you read it and responded in your points today, but I'm going to read this petition that was written by your neighbors 1 week ago and was signed by over 435 individuals and 8 organizations just over that week. We are Brattleboro and surrounding area residents and are responding to recent proposals addressing town safety, specifically this ordinance. We are concerned with the speed and nature of decisions being made without input from those most vulnerable and at risk of violence. These decisions are in opposition to the Select Board Commissioned Community Safety Review, as well as the 911 data analysis, and seem to be in response to pressure from a citizen minority. We propose alternate ways of addressing community issues. We see and hear that things have changed around town and people are nervous, and we agree, break-ins, theft, lethality of street drugs, rental and home prices, numbers of homeless, etc. But the chaos that dominates the conversation about downtown is a direct result of lost and inadequate resources. Poverty and homelessness are the result and not the cause of economic downturn. And when we speak of public safety, we must commit to all of our neighbors. If we are indeed to consider the Brattleboro community as a family. We ask for town money to be invested in dignified and compassionate solutions to increase quality of life and not systems that punish the behavior of those suffering. As we read through the ordinances, we see a shared concern about public cleanliness, access and usage of public spaces, youth safety, and discomfort with visible suffering. These are valid concerns that we hold as well. We only disagree on the solutions. Why treat the symptoms when you can treat the cause? Many of us drafting this petition work in the helping professions and daily witness the damage that criminalizing poverty and addiction causes. Citations do not reduce the suffering that leads to disorderly conduct, and these legal challenges make it harder to obtain housing and work and recovery. Offering social service alternatives to citations is a good idea, but there are nowhere near enough local recovery options, jobs that pay a living wage, or housing. Trespass citations can't work when there's nowhere for people to go. And penalizing mental health struggles, from which so many people of all walks of life suffer, is dangerous and a slippery slope. We offer suggestions: drinking water stations, public bathrooms, storage lockers for homeless folks, sharps containers with regular maintenance, heating and cooling stations, community-maintained community center, alternatives to 911 for low to moderate risk calls and mental health crises, which would be, in response to that 911 data analysis, that most of those calls were not criminal offenses to 911, increased access to Narcan, increased access to health and sanitary supplies, and free education on health and safety. If you're going to do a messaging campaign, why can't it be educational? And we all wish to live in a safe, dynamic, healthy community where care for our neighbors takes precedence over all else. We thank you for your time and your work.
Thanks, Ava. 2 minutes 56, did great. So I'll remind folks that I'm going to try and kind of like alternate perspectives. And so I'm going to go to Susan on Zoom next. And again, I'll also remind folks that if what you've heard kind of matches what you want to say, then maybe let somebody else speak first. And Sue, thank you for pinch hitting for Patrick tonight. I hope the Zoom treats you well. So Susan, we're inviting you to speak if you're ready. If you're not, I'll move on to somebody else. Going once. Going twice. All right, let's go to HB. And we'll come back to Susan if she still wants to speak.
Hey, everybody. HB, can you hear me? Are you starting my timer? Great. HB Lozito, District 8. I have read this very closely, and it's pretty interesting. So I was going to keep it short. I will keep it short, but I think I wanted to respond to a couple of things that folks on the board said. To me, a lot of this is that no one is suggesting kicking the can. There's so much work happening already in our community on this very issue. None of that stops if you don't, and none of that gets started if you don't pass this evening. That is all continuing to happen. Yes?
Struggling to hear. So BCTV, can you help us turn up the volume in the room, please? That might not happen immediately, but we'll get on.
Okay. Should I keep going?
Keep going.
So much louder. I think that this does nothing to get people the help that they need. I think that's something that I heard someone say. To me, like the main things about this are, it is absolutely divisive. We've seen that in the experiences that people have had in the community in the last couple of weeks since this language has come through. I'm feeling that, absolutely. I know other folks are feeling that. It's so redundant. As you other folks were saying, there's so many things in here that are already criminal and civil penalties. It feels like, what is the point of this now? We can already do so much of this work if we so choose in the ways that it already exists. It's expensive, right? Like, so many of us just receive tax bills that are so much higher than they've ever been before. This ordinance, the item you're voting on now before you in this moment, has no money tied to it. And a couple items later, we're looking at $650,000 to help support the enforcement of this ordinance. We're looking at another $800,000 in an ongoing way to support this ordinance. That's a lot of money. I think it's a really difficult time to be asking our friends and neighbors to be paying more for this right now when it is so redundant. encouraging you all to let the experts, the very, very many experts in our community, do their jobs that they're already doing. This also creates a really high administrative burden. Our town staff are already very busy. Something that stuck out to me that I was seeing a lot of was it deputizes so many staff who are not experts in dealing with the kinds of behaviors that you're attempting to correct through this kind of ordinance. I don't know that those folks are ready to do that kind of decision making. And their designee is really vague to me. I want to encourage and allow our town staff to do the jobs that they are supremely qualified for and already very busy doing. I don't want to go line by line. To me, the entire premise of this is not useful for our community. I think it actually removes our ability to be in this fully together. Asking for you all to vote no on this, and I hope you do so.
Thanks, HP. Let's try Susan again, and then maybe come back to the room. Susan, you are invited to join the meeting if you're ready to do so. If not, maybe you put your hand down. I mean that with love. I heard some chuckles. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So that's that. So let's come back to the room. Libby.
Hi, my name is Libby Bennett. I live in Brattleboro, and I'm the executive director at Groundworks Collaborative. I'm one of the many voices who reached out to you to say, please slow this process down. I urge you to consider greatly the weight and implications of these rush decisions. We need a more balanced approach that more properly weighs the consequences versus compassion. Enacting this ordinance will set a precedent. Please seek the shared knowledge of the One Brattleboro team, another initiative that this board has put forward, which is finally beginning to gel around creating some community impact, collective impact in the community. If you provide for the needs of everyone in this community and people opt not to use those resources, then enact an ordinance. If you offer people an appropriate place to use the bathroom and they don't, then enact an ordinance. If you seek a meaningful way to make detox beds and substance use treatment available and easy to access, and people aren't taking advantage of those resources, then consider your options. If this select board feels the need to set an ordinance around conduct, we would ask that you very carefully scrutinize every detail in the context of what services are and are not available in this community. What happens when tickets go unpaid? Who is going to facilitate the restorative justice process? It needs to be a voluntary process to be restorative justice. What will incentivize landlords to rent to people with housing vouchers if they are at risk of being named a high nuisance property? Who will help people find recovery programs or substance use treatment? How will you make it easy for people to access? Where will you recommend people access detox beds? And will people be offered transportation to easily access detox? How will you make it easy for people to access mental health beds versus waiting for days on end in the hospital's emergency department? How will you use the collective voice of this board to advocate for adequate resources to help people choose other options? If this select board feels the need to pass an ordinance around conduct, I ask that you very thoughtfully develop the realistic plans around the provision of services. Allow people to very easily choose a restoration plan. The reality is that the options people have to change the behaviors that you name are scarce, underfunded, and many are incredibly difficult to access. Groundworks and many service providers must have the ability to call for emergency services for any number of medical and safety emergencies. We simply will not tell our staff that they cannot call for assistance without an exemption to the high response property clause. And the fines would impose a significant financial burden for this organization. Please slow down this process. Do not adopt this ordinance on the second reading. Give time for the One Brattleboro team to offer solutions and a data-driven approach. Assign a deadline to the group if you feel the need, but do not adopt this ordinance tonight.
Doing so would constitute an irresponsible policymaking process and would undermine the work and efforts of the One Brattleboro team. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Danny?
Thank you. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, Director of the Brattleboro Museum. I have enormous respect for HB and Libby and their organizations and the work they do in the community. I consider them invaluable, and I just disagree with their positions on what's in front of us here tonight. I think an ordinance is a great idea. I think we're in a place, in a situation where it's long overdue. If it were up to me, this ordinance would be more, I don't know what the right word is, strict or something than it is. But I well understand that we all, will land in different places on that, and that's fine. That's part of just being a community. I guess a general point that I want to add to the conversation is that being a community that does offer so much in the way of human services and is so compassionate, and that I appreciate, and I think many of us appreciate, that makes us a community that also needs ordinances like this. In other communities that aren't providing services like this and don't have as much of a population that requires services and that is struggling, don't necessarily need ordinances. But we need both things. And if we're going to be a community that is providing services, then we also need to have boundaries clearly articulated like this one. Do I have any time left?
Yeah, you got a minute and 20 seconds.
I'm not sure if the town manager just misspoke initially when you were asking to clarify about the change that was made to the high response rate. But if you go from 4 instances per year to 4 instances per 3 months, that's actually 16 instances per year. And that feels like maybe overshooting, and maybe it should be 3 instances per 3 months, which would be 12 per year. Thank you. No, but it would be times 4.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, thank you. And I just realized that I've been looking at this clock and it's so wrong. So it's 7:30. We'll hear some more comment. I know lots of people want to speak. I'm going to go back to Zoom and I'm going to give Susan one more try. Susan, welcome to the meeting. If you can join us.
There's something wrong with her.
There's clearly something not working there. Let's go to Cindy. Actually, I'm sorry, my bad. Shay. Hi, Shay. Welcome. If you just introduce yourself.
First, hi, my name's Shay. I'm a Brattleboro resident. I was a co-author of the Community Safety Review. And I direct a statewide anti-violence program that supports people who experience violence in Brattleboro and beyond. I want to heartily oppose this proposal in its entirety. You all are talking about really urgent problems that exist. Homelessness, the upcoming increase in homelessness due to people being exited from the motels, and the visible expressions of distress, and some of which are harmful and some of which are not, that are occurring in our community. And I notice about this petition particularly, which I hope the folks in that room can take a look at some point, that it is so representative of so many of the social service providers and organizations in town that do support work. I really want to build on a point that Libby made, that doing this support work would be a much better use of this funding that's going to be put toward enforcement than enforcement at this stage. I think that this is something that I would call the theater of harm reduction. Despite anybody's opinion, it literally is criminalizing to add ordinances and police money and enforcement. That is what criminalization is functionally. I've heard words but used by the select board today, like using a stick, a swift kick in the ass, fines and penalties, and also naming that this isn't punitive and is very flexible and is very supportive. If you want to do support, give money to the supporters, the peer support workers, the medical support workers, the addiction, harm reduction, recovery programs. Those are the people who are most trained and experienced in supporting people who are experiencing the kind of distress that we're seeing. And I heard you all cite that people are exiting the motels, so we got to pass this quickly. That means that we are functionally criminalizing poverty here. And that's not going to help. That's what's kicking the can down the road. Because these people need support and basic needs met. If there's this much emergency money available, we should put it toward housing those people. We should put it toward support service for those folks, not toward punishment. And you all have heard a lot of evidence of the harms of policing beyond just the highest needs or most known individuals in our community during the community safety review. You heard hundreds of voices and from 20 plus organizations about what they hoped that you all would do. And I feel like this is a real abandonment of those voices that you've already heard before and now. And I think any articulation that this process is collaborative when you know that those many voices are fully in opposition of this is disingenuous. This is not a collaborative process yet. And I don't know that folks have a reason to collaborate yet if they feel so unheard. So I hope that you oppose this for now, at least, and revisit it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lisa? Yep.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ford. I'm the board chair of the Boys and Girls Club. Please do not slow down this process. We have been coming before you as an organization since, I think, 2018. This ordinance cannot be passed fast enough. We would like to see more police patrolling our streets, not less. I was personally a social worker in Philadelphia during the crack epidemic and was told not to go into certain neighborhoods during the middle of the day because it was dangerous. That is similar to Flat Street. There are drug dealers, and I would not actually recommend that social workers intervene by themselves in some of these situations. So I really appreciate the support of the select board right now and hope you pass this ordinance and get it started. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Again, we're not clapping. Sorry. We're going to go back to Zoom. Cindy?
First Amendment.
Hi.
Cindy, if you could just introduce yourself. I'm sorry. We're going to ask you to unmute.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
If you could just introduce yourself, please.
My name is Cindy Krug, and I'm the manager at Twice Upon a Time. My family has owned Twice Upon a Time for 37 years. We give to local charities. We are part of the community. We fully support all of the nonprofits in town who do fantastic work to help everyone. I just want to be clear on that before I say my piece. I feel like the businesses downtown are not being heard from. And we also have a petition, which I'm sure you've all heard about. And I just want to point out, this is not about the unhoused for us. This is not about people who are experiencing homelessness, which we feel for them and we hope that they get help and everything they need. But for us, this is about feeling unsafe. It's about having our business decrease and yet everything else goes up. The cost of everything has gone up. Employees need more money. Vendors need more money. Everyone needs more money, but yet we make less. And we have clients who are telling us every day that they no longer come to our store. And after 37 years, we have built a family. We have over 60 vendors who come to our store. Almost every business on Main Street has signed our petition that also support this. And it's basically asking to feel safe. We're asking for lights and more police downtown and the police liaisons who are unarmed who can help de-escalate situations, and we fully support this. We have watched over the years how more and more of the people who we used to see every day are now saying they don't feel safe parking in Brattleboro. I had an experience just the other day with a police officer from another town in Brattleboro, or another town in Vermont, and I was giving a statement, and she said she went to a gallery walk in Brattleboro with her son, and her husband, who is also a cop, made her carry at that event because he felt like she would be unsafe. What does that say about our community, and how can we ask other people to come to Brattleboro and to downtown if we can't feel safe, if our businesses can't thrive? And how can we ask people to move into apartments downtown or to fill empty storefronts that give these tax dollars, that support these nonprofits and give you the resources you need? We would love to give more, but how can we give more when we're making less? We need to encourage people to come back downtown. We need the locals to come back downtown. All these people who tell us that they are now afraid to park and walk. Every single day I see it. People walking down the middle of the street like they're in another world, like they don't even know what's going on. They could get hit by a car and there's nothing we can do. People who steal from us and have pockets full of needles and we can't do anything. We can't touch them. We can't get our things back. Theft is in the thousands. I don't know what else to say except we are pleading with you. All these other businesses who signed our petition are pleading with you. Please, please help us to stay in this community and to help support these nonprofits with the tax dollars you so rightly deserve and need.
Cindy. Let's come back to the room, and I think we're going to go to Spencer next.
So, Spencer Crisp, West Brattleboro. Where has being soft and like this ridiculous excessive compassion gotten us? Like, what has that gotten us? What has it got other towns in the United States? Burlington, Vermont, which is like disgusting. It's going to hell. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. Where has that gotten these other towns? Everybody suffers. Everybody gets zero. Everybody loses. Nobody's nobody's talking about, like, if you're homeless or if you have a mental health issue or if you have addiction, our heart goes, I don't think anybody in this room is like demonizing those folks. It's being a freaking jerk. If you're a jerk and you're a criminal and you're entitled to your own freedom not to take others away. And when you start taking other people's freedom away, ruining businesses, and doing those things, that's where this ordinance applies, and it's wise. I do think we should proceed cautiously, make sure it's written well. Mr. Quip, I think your concerns about the wording were well suited and excellent. We could take another couple of weeks, but not a couple of months. We need to get a lot tougher. What about compassion for the business owners and for the people's safety, for the women and people who don't want to go in the parking garage, for the kids and the dogs that can step on needles and poke themselves with needles that are discarded on the street? What about compassion? I want to hear about compassion for those people. We're so all these compassion for people who are constantly being jerks and taking other people's rights away and ruining communities and hurting good law-abiding citizens. I want to hear about compassion for the citizens who are just trying to raise their family and take care of their kids. What about compassion for those business owners and those people? So yeah, I love it that we're talking about a big stick. I want to have a big, huge, giant stick. Punishment. You deal fentanyl, you sell fentanyl, a terrorist, we're going to come after you with a big stick. You go and you burglarize and you mistreat women and you make people feel unsafe, we're coming after you with a big stick, and there's going to be punishment, big-time punishment. You're not doing that in Brattleboro.
Wait. Let's not speak to each other, please. Okay, so...
Crimea River.
Spencer? No, that's not helpful, as you know. So we're going to go to Anthony next, and then I'm going to bring it back to the board for some further consideration.
Yeah, Jason. Can you guys hear me?
Hi, Anthony.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Anthony Santorelli, and I work in downtown Brattleboro. I work at the Brattleboro Food Co-op. So I've heard a number of comments even from the beginning of when this conversation started about, number one was like, will this work? At this point, I don't think, complacency and punting is not a valid or acceptable response, or are we doing too much at one time? I feel like it feels like we're already 5 steps behind. We haven't done enough to date. And that's not to downplay the recent things that have happened, the police department and the recent things that we've done. That's been great. But I think the approach here is then let's see how that works, as opposed to stepping back and to see how other things might work. We're on a program here. Let's stick with that. And if we're being asked to wait, what does that mean? How long do we wait? Who decides that? Who makes the call that, it's working or it's not? It just doesn't feel right to me. I mean, accountability is needed, and it's realistically needed now. We've been talking about this for a few weeks. Like I said, I think a number of people would also suggest, hey, we're already behind schedule on things that need to be done here. I've heard other folks talk about we're moving too fast. And that, again, goes back to what does too fast mean? We had an overdose death just yesterday in downtown Brattleboro. So what does moving too fast mean? Right? Does that mean we'll have less overdoses, deaths going forward? Does that mean we'll have less defecation in the streets, less public intoxication? Or does it mean we'll have more people feeling safe when they go downtown? So I'm just trying to say, this just feels like waiting is probably just not the right approach here, knowing that there's a lot of things that need to be tackled and we're already behind schedule here. And I guess that's all I'm going to say at this point. So thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'll take 2 more hands that were raised earlier. So we're going to go Jason and then the person on Zoom whose name I cannot see.
Thank you. My name is Jason Cooper. I live right on Main Street in Brattleboro. This issue, as I see it, is not about the drug addiction, about the homelessness, about the mental health issues, although those are related. This is about the behavior in downtown and what is appropriate behavior and what we would like to have in our town and what is reasonable. People passed out on the walkways and benches, drug use and paraphernalia on the streets and our parks. This is not acceptable for public behavior, no matter what your situation is. Neither me, my children, my family should have to be confronting this on a daily basis. This is a very generous community. There are places where people can get food in this town, they can get clothing, they can get counseling, and lots more. We have people from Turning Point telling us, please don't give people money. If you give people money, you might be the one who gives them what finances their fatal dose or their continues to support a troubling behavior, which is further going to destroy them. If we have good signage and good communications that tells people where they can get help, then hopefully we can get the people who need the help off the street. But regardless of that, we need to discourage this kind of behavior as much for us as for the well-being of this town. We want this town to be vibrant, attractive, where people come to visit and live and where businesses thrive and our kids are safe. This kind of behavior is disruptive and intrusive and can't take place on our streets. I live here on Main Street. I hear people yelling at night or in the evening at all hours. I have video of people standing outside my door shooting up. I've walked out my door and found people crapping in the dumpster that's right there. This is just not what we should have. This has nothing to do whether someone is homeless or not. This has to do with appropriate behavior, and that is not. I've approached people who have been out there with signs saying homeless, anything helps, and offered them $20 an hour to come work with me for a couple of hours. And I've been laughed at being told, I can make much more out here on the street. That doesn't sound like what it's being billed as. But I try and do my part. I've donated to most of these agencies who are opposed to this because they provide services that these people need. And our community does that. There's several people in our building downtown that have moved out of the area because they say they're not feeling safe walking on the streets in the evenings or in the night.
If you could start to wrap it up, Jason.
I will. They feel they're not safe in the parking areas downtown. I strongly support this effort and encourage people to pass this as quickly as possible to discourage the negative behavior and to try and steer people who need help in the direction that they need to go. Hopefully this increased police presence and other people who are being funded by this are going to help guide people who need help in the direction that they need to go, and so that they get better and don't continue to be in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take one final comment for now, and then we're going to come back to the board. I don't see the person's name, but if you could invite them to join the meeting. Sure. Need to get some binoculars or something.
Looks like Henry.
Yeah. Henri. Yeah. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Henry Binks. I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Ishtar Collective. We're an anti-trafficking and labor rights organization based out of the Green Mountain state of Vermont. We do direct services and policy work regionally. I grew up in poverty and spent most of my young adult life houseless, struggling with substance use. I'm happy to say that I've been running my organization for about 5 years now. And what got me out of my situation was not criminalization. I certainly experienced that as well, being a survival sex worker at the time. But what got me out actually was my community when I finally settled due to the pandemic here in Vermont. What happened, was a lot of people were displaced, and the Green Mountain State kind of showed community spirit. We were able to start an organization, a lot of folks coming from similar economic backgrounds as myself, during a global pandemic because of the spirit of community and the collective refusal to criminalize these very real struggles. I've been in this advocacy space now for 5 years, and I do know that international research shows that the criminalization of any behavior born of poverty is ineffective. What it might do is push forward the criminal industrial complex, which we know doesn't provide sustainable housing or transitional services, but instead perpetuates imprisonment and criminality. Right. Vermont wants to be a safe state in a political climate that is changing. We are going to see more people in marginalization coming to the Green Mountain State looking for that spirit of community we so advertise. And what are we going to do when more of these marginalized people arrive to our state and we have ordinances for behavior and nothing for support? I just want you to consider these very real factors. Your concerns are valid, but the people coming in here experiencing those struggles aren't less entitled to the very real human accessibility to things like bathrooms, that we have. I think that people poop in dumpsters when they don't have toilets, and people steal when they don't have resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Board, we're going to come back for some further deliberation here and maybe some action. I just want to check with Bob. I had a couple of changes that I requested. The board can entertain those, but functionally, would that mean that this then needs to get another draft and come back for further reading?
If you consider those minor changes as a board, you could make those changes in a motion and adopt tonight. If you think that they either are more substantial or material changes, then tell us to go back, edit it, and come back for what would be a third reading and adopt it or not adopt it as you so see fit at that time.
Okay.
But, I didn't hear anything other than one item that you wanted removed as being
Oh, John's on it.
There were three items. One was a removal on page 74 of the interfering with free passage of people on a sidewalk. The second was entering into or completing a restorative justice process on page 78. And the third was adding the property owner or designee on page 79. Is that what you had, Daniel?
That sounds right to me.
Second, from legal perspective, though, it's really you're the ones making the decision. I don't think are material changes. And with regard to the other, I would just note that obstructing vehicular or pedestrian traffic is a criminal statute. It's under disorderly conduct. So that part of what we have in this ordinance is an overlap between what could be charged as criminal behavior and what can be charged as unacceptable behavior in our particular zones as a civil ordinance in order to have that choice. So from my perspective, it's up to you whether you want that in there and just to have the disorderly conduct only be charged criminally if a police officer saw that. But if a police officer saw people physically obstructing sidewalks, they could choose to give a civil ticket versus criminally cite them for a criminal statute violation. Mm-hmm. So I just tell you that difference. It's up to you whether you want to put it in or out.
Right, and a third choice is they could simply have a conversation with them and issue no kind of citation at all.
That's always an option, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. Liz, you wanted to speak to?
Well, I just wanted, I'd be happy to amend my motion to include your edits.
Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful. Looking around the rest of the board, seeing if there's any kind of issue with that. Seems like there is not. Okay.
I move to adopt the changes, including Daniel Quip's recent changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Article 9, Acceptable Community Conduct, Section 13-400 through 13-440 as presented.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Liz has made that motion. Board, is there any further and final discussion on that motion? Are you ready to take action on it? France?
Yes, I'm making a motion to table the discussion until October 1st.
Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that we do need a little bit more time. I'm not in favor of a long-term delay. As I said, I generally support this ordinance, but I think there are people who want to have more input, including people that we may need to hear from who haven't been able to speak at length here tonight, and there may be further input that we want to take as part of this process. So I'd be in favor of a 2-week delay in our final adoption process.
Okay. And now I'm going to be forced to do some like parliamentary kind of stuff, and I'm terrible at that. So Liz made the motion first, right? So actually we should entertain that motion first? No? Come on, help me out then.
The motion to table the discussion takes precedence.
I'm going to trust that that's true.
First.
Very good. So we got a motion to table this discussion.
If the motion to table fails, then we go back to Liz's.
Very good. Okay. So, board, consideration of this motion to table the discussion until October 1st.
Well, that's our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Sure.
No, September 19th is your next meeting.
Our next regular meeting.
Next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah. Thoughts on that? Ready for the question? Okay. So Francis made a motion to table this discussion until our next regularly scheduled meeting, which he believes to be October 1st. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's 2 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Nay. That's 3 opposed. So that motion fails. So we're going to come back to Liz's motion, which was to adopt the changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Article E, Roman numerals 9. Acceptable community conduct, section 13-400 through 13-440 as amended.
Yes.
Are you ready for that question?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 3 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Nay. 2 opposed, motion carries. So you have adopted these changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinances. And at this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Thank you.
So, folks, it is 8:10, so we're going to come back from our little break. BCTV, are you ready for us? I'm assuming so. Some disembodied voice will tell us no otherwise. Okay, all right, very good. So the next item on our agenda is the first item of new business, item A, which is funding the Downtown Safety Action Plan. John, were you going to introduce this?
Yeah, I can give a little background on this. So at your August 20th meeting, Chief Hardy came to speak to you about the Downtown Safety Action Plan. And one of the motions that you made that night was to have certain elements of that plan be brought back to you with cost and financing options for immediate implementation. So staff went and worked on that question, and Chief Hardy worked with the HR director, the finance director, and the assistant town manager and her staff to help us develop this estimate of what the cost would be for implementing the Downtown Safety Action Plan. Speaking to a memo that is on page 95 of your backup materials. And in this, you will see a table, couple tables, but the first one on page 95 summarizes what the needs would be to implement the Downtown Safety Action Plan for the remainder of fiscal year 25. So if you wanted to proceed with this immediately and continue to move ahead with hiring potential staff for these positions, this is what would be needed. And so under that, for the BRAT team, there would be a cost of $199,647 for staffing, $7,429 for uniforms, $50,000 for one vehicle. It says 2 in there, but that's for one vehicle in fiscal 25. $35,666 for radios, software, computers, and $57,650 for the resource specialist. That's the BRAT team. On the separate items related to the 3 new patrol officers, if you were to implement that, the hiring wouldn't begin until January, I believe, and the chief can correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but that would start in January. So the staffing needs for the 3 new patrol officers, if implemented immediately, would be $127,864 for fiscal year 25, $14,613 for uniforms and vests, $152,000 for two vehicles, and $30,800 for radios, software, and computers, or a total of $325,277 for the 3 new patrol officers if it were implemented in fiscal 25. That would be a total of $675,669, which is the number that is in the potential motion that you have before you. That would be $675,669 for fiscal 25. If you turn the page and you look at page 96 of the memo, there's a second table, and both of these tables summarize things nicely in terms of what the costs are. This second table looks at the cost in fiscal year 26 to implement the Downtown Safety Action Plan. So for the BRAT staffing, that would be $276,844, $79,942 for the resource specialist. The data analyst position was not proposed in this funding scenario to be implemented in fiscal 25, so that would come in fiscal 26 at $62,616. And the 3 patrol officers continuing into fiscal 26 would be at a cost of $265,957. In addition, the additional vehicle for the BRAT team would come in at $50,000, and a vehicle equipment replacement cost on a 5-year interval would kick in at $68,102, or an ongoing cost in fiscal 26 of $803,459. Now, there's several other things referred to in the memo, which constitutes the plan that the staff are bringing forward for you to consider in this this item. One thing is we did start to look at the idea of the substation at the Brattleboro Transportation Center, and we quickly realized 2 things. One, that it was going to take us some more time to develop good estimates for what a retrofitting of that space would cost. We're still working on that. We hope that we could bring something back to you at your October 1st meeting that kind of lays out some options for the transportation center. The second thing that we realized on that was that no matter what we do there, if you do want to proceed with something at the transportation center, it's going to take some time to implement that. And there was a sense in your discussion on August 20th that you were looking to do something more quickly than like 1 or 1.5 years out, something like that. So staff put their heads together with the DPW and came up with the idea or the proposal here to use renovated space here at the Municipal Center at a cost not to exceed $80,000 from the available balance of Municipal Center funds in the capital fund that we have for this building. Couple final things. One is that in addition, this proposal would be to direct $10,000 from the remaining funds in the Community Safety Fund to the General Fund for additional public messaging, holding that out, but using a transfer of the remaining balance, which is estimated at $30,000, to the Capital Fund to address the cost of additional security cameras. There is a question, of course, where we find these funds. We don't have this budgeted. We have none of this budgeted at all. The proposal here is that we consider this an emergent public safety need, and we use the set aside that the town has in the fund balance in the case of an emergency, as you know, that we have as a rainy day fund there. So we're proposing that the select board could find that the present circumstances to be such an emergency and ask the RTM to ratify the additional spending. So move forward, use the fund balance, and ratify that at town meeting. We are aware of a partial offset in fiscal 25 that could help with that $675,669 expense if you wanted to move forward with this. And that is a FEMA grant that we've received in the amount of $325,678. That was a partial grant for a capital project on William Street, which some or all of that could become available and could offset the use of the fund balance. We would propose, if you wanted to proceed with that, we would propose that we wait and see what the project ends up costing, and then just transferring any remainder from that grant amount to the general fund to offset the unforeseen costs of the downtown safety action plan being implemented in the manner that I've described. So yeah, I think that's. I think I covered pretty much everything. Oh, we did. One thing I didn't mention was that fiscal year 26 annual cost would be of $803,000 approximately. We did run that through the FY25 tax rate calculator and found that additional sum would have added an additional estimated $65.90 per 100,000 of assessed value. So for a median house, it might run something like $180, $200 annualized for addressing this downtown safety action need. So that was all the information that we put together for this item, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Chief Hardy's here if you have any questions about the proposal.
Great, thanks, John.
Yep. And there is a proposed motion.
Okay, so there's a lot to digest there, Board. Do we want to dive in with questions right now?
Do we need to make a motion?
We don't need to, but we can.
Okay.
Would you like to?
I'll make the motion.
Yeah.
Sure. I motion to move to direct the town manager to continue implementing the Downtown Safety Action Plan as presented with an estimated cost of $675,699 for the emergent unbudgeted expenditures in FY25 and with an estimated $803,459 added to the base budget for FY26.
Great. Would you like to speak to it?
I know that we're looking at some fairly large numbers. I know that, and I think I made this statement in the last meeting that this problem doesn't go away on its own and with a wish and a prayer. So as much as I don't like adding to the tax base, I'm planning on voting in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Board, questions? Liz?
Thank you, Daniel. So the first part of the motion, the $675,669, this is essentially an emergency expense that the select board would approve, and then it would be ratified at town meeting. The second half of this, is my understanding, is an element in next year's budget, and it would proceed through the budget process. So I'm fine with this. I think, $200 for the average homeowner. I think, not that they would welcome this, but they would understand the need for the personnel. And I think that we've really, in many ways, have already set this in motion with previous votes. So I'm certainly in favor of this.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Franz?
Yeah, I have some specific questions, things I'm just not 100% clear on. And they apply differently to the different time periods, et cetera. So the Brattleboro Response Assistance Team, the staffing would be 4 individuals. Is that correct? Okay. Now, 2 positions are currently being paid for to outside security services. So there would be some offset in terms of that amount of money that we'd be spending on staff, but we'd be saving on staff in another area. Is that correct?
Yes, but the security services was also unbudgeted, so it would be wrapped into this 675, 669 cost that we would propose to use as an emergent need.
Thanks.
Say more about that. How would it be wrapped?
It was already unbudgeted. We had never budgeted for security services, so it's as unbudgeted as it was before.
Correct.
But it would be money that we're planning on spending unbudgeted that we would still be spending unbudgeted.
Yes.
It wouldn't be completely new unbudgeted money.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So 4 individuals would have uniforms that cost close to $2,000 each. I guess they're nice uniforms, but I just wonder what goes into that, and I'm sure it's high-tech type stuff, but I'd be interested to hear just what those uniforms are.
Yeah, and perhaps Chief Hardy could
I was going to say, Chief, do you want to join us at the presenter table?
While she's coming up, I will say that, so the uniform...
Kim, by all means.
The uniforms also cover the need for the resource specialist as well, which is a member of the BRAT team. So
I see. So it'd be 5 uniforms.
5.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Chief Hardy, Kim Frost. Franz, you have more questions?
Yeah. And And getting to the resource specialist, I'm not sure what that resource specialist actually does and why it's part of this team, so I'd like to hear that too, Chief Hardy.
Well, in the original plan, it was called the peer support person, but we felt that we should have renamed it so as not to cause confusion with some of the peer support services that are available in town.
And what would they be doing exactly?
We have a need that we supply individuals with. We talk to them about resources, particularly with drug rehab. We drive people to treatment. We drive people that we have to interact with as police to treatment. That person would be able to do that. I won't have to have an officer that won't make those transports for us anymore. And also, since that person is someone who has dealt with addiction and recovery and long-term recovery, we felt that it will also give people a more trusting attitude toward that individual, that instead of us driving them to their treatment, they'll have someone that they can interact with on a different basis.
Thank you.
Great.
Any more questions for us?
Did you want to hear more about the uniforms?
Yes, I guess, well, I mean, I did ask what the details of the uniforms are. You know, I'm sure you have to have very high-quality uniforms, but just what goes into that expense?
For Brat or for anyone?
Well, yeah, you know, just when I saw a line item, that amount for uniforms, it made me wonder, well, what's included in that?
Well, for the Brat officers, it would be everything that a police officer has except the gun.
So, camera.
Yes, they have to have camera.
Protection.
They have to have protection. And
okay.
they will be level 2 officers, but since they won't be unarmed, that's the part that they will not be carrying as far as a level 3 officer can carry an off.
And would the uniform look the same as a standard officer's uniform?
No.
What are you envisioning in terms of
more high visibility for them, so that people will know who to look for in the downtown area when they need assistance. Also, it's a different uniform because we don't want people to mistake them for police officers. We want them to stand out as a resource for people to do escorts and stuff like that. So we want the uniform to be different from a police officer.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Any more questions, Franz? I've got a ton, just so you know.
And I'm sure they'll be very good, Daniel.
I can't say that.
Well, I guess, yeah, I do have a bigger question. I'll tell you what, can you come back to me later?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. Richard?
I would love to see this put into place. I think we could use this. It would really make a difference. On the other hand, and I also could see a case to be made for it being an emergent situation. But in my mind, I don't really think it rises to that level, and I think we'd be doing the taxpayers a disservice if we considered this to be something that was not first presented to RTM. I think we need to do that. And I think the other problem I have with this is that, well, of course, the burden of taxes, and we can't take it lightly, and I think this is just pushing things way over the top. And we don't need to burden people even more. Maybe people are happy to spend this extra money and they'll feel safer. That's a possibility. But what I think is really important is that this needs to be looked at in the context of the entire budget, and we're not doing that. We're looking at it as, let's get this done now, this is really important, let's do it. The representative town meeting has the ability to look at the entire budget, to weigh priorities, to look at things and give due consideration. I think we do a disservice to the town, to the people that elected us, if we push this through right now.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to weigh in, and I have some questions for our town attorney. So, this is proposed as an emergent, unbudgeted expenditure, a significant one, higher than I've ever seen in the 6 years I've been on the board. There are other options, right? Another option is So as it was originally proposed, it was for the FY26 budget, which will be voted on by town meeting, the end of March, basically, which is quite a long time from now, and then won't even take effect until July 1. Another option is you warn a special town meeting. Could you just tell us how that goes about?
Sure. You have the option, I think there are three options. If I can, I'll just outline them.
Great, thank you.
One is to treat it as an emergency and spend the money. The town has the fund balance from which to spend the money from what's in funds, and then ask at next year's representative town meeting to have that ratified, to essentially authorize that as a transfer from the unassigned fund balance to cover this expense, okay? Second option, you have the ability to set a special representative town meeting that requires at least 30, not more than 40 days warning for that. And you could then at that representative town meeting ask the representatives to authorize or appropriate from the fund balance, unassigned fund balance, this amount of money for fiscal year 25. That, depending on when you want, to schedule that, my concern is just one for the workload for our town clerk with a major election coming up next month, or in early November. Yep. So timing-wise, I would just say keep that in mind. And third, you could also, and this is probably, just putting it out there as a legal option, you could have a special representative town meeting, and at that you could raise and appropriate the amount of money for fiscal year 25. But that would require then to send out amended tax bills for the remainder of the regular tax payments. That is perfectly legal. It's a legal option, so I want you to know that. From the standpoint of how it works in practice, it's a lot of extra administrative work on the finance department, treasurer's office. Think of people who pay their mortgage companies, pay their taxes. It causes more of a practical effect on that.
Yeah.
So, but those are, from my perspective, your legal options.
Thanks, Bob. And so the special, so say we went down the emergency route today and, said this is money we want to spend even though it's unbudgeted, take it out of fund balance. At RTM in March, if that question to ratify fails, what happens then?
Then your fund balance is that amount less, and then the auditors, your unassigned fund balance at the end of that fiscal year would be that amount less. And
okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that, please.
No, you're correct.
Okay. And so we would just simply have less funds in our fund balance. Okay, and then I guess, just following that thread a little bit. So right now we have 2.2 million in fund balance?
Yeah.
In our savings account, essentially.
Right, and that's unaudited.
Yeah, yes.
So I just want to be...
Understood, yes.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that vagueness. Okay. I know that you're not. And that's right. So if we were to spend out of that fund balance, the board's policy in the past has been to retain 10% of the general fund as a fund balance. And so would there then need to be an additional kind of taxation in order to refill that fund balance? How would that work?
So we hold 10% aside for emergencies. That's a different part of the fund balance. Then, we have a fund balance, we put the emergencies aside, then you have a fund balance.
I see.
So if you were to spend from the emergency pot, that would take from the emergency and still keep your fund balance intact.
Okay. Franz, you have a question?
Yes. Are you saying that we have $2.2 million of unassigned fund balance at this point, meaning in excess of the 10% that we withhold?
No, we have 2.2.
Which is just about 10%. So there isn't some other source of money than our rainy day set aside unassigned fund balance that we try to keep at 10%. We would be drawing that significantly down below 10%.
So we have fund balance, and then we take our 10% and we put that aside. After we're audited, then we take that 10% and we put it aside, and then we have a fund balance. This $2.2 million is not audited yet. So that is our total savings, our total fund balance.
What you just said seems contradictory to me, that we take the 10% and put it aside. Where is that put aside?
It's just held in the bank to put it aside.
Okay.
Like that's the
So
emergency money.
That's there, and that's our sort of sacred cow, 10%.
Correct.
How much do we have over and above that we could actually spend on this without drawing our 10% down?
So you'd have 2.2 million. 10% of that is give me a second. Give you
Well, it'd be
real numbers.
220,000, but
Yep. Well,
I'm not asking 10% of that. I'm asking, we've got our unassigned, we've got fund balance that's set aside to be for emergencies, when it comes to 10% of the annual budget, which is, a little bit over a month's worth of expenses averaged out. So we consider that important to have that in reserve in case, we have another flood or something like that. So that's in a bank account somewhere. But what I'm asking about is other fund balance that's not represented in that 10% set aside. How much money is there that we have to spend on something like this?
so right now, because it's unaudited, because we just finished a year, we don't have that number yet.
Okay.
We know that it's $2.2 million that we have as potentially fund balance. So nothing's been set aside yet from that because we have an unaudited number.
So the 10% has not yet been set aside.
That is correct.
Franz.
Yeah.
This originated with me, and I'm going to bring it back over here if you don't mind.
Okay, as long as everybody understands.
That's what I'm trying to
that
help
we'd be
everybody
spending money from what we normally consider our savings account, our safety account.
Yeah,
that's all.
I totally understand that, and I think that's what I'm trying to kind of just make sure everybody in the public is also clear about as well.
Then
and
take it away.
Because Kim is a responsible finance director, you're not willing to speak to numbers that haven't been audited. That makes total sense, right? Thank you. Okay, so moving aside from kind of questions about legality and questions about funding, the actual expense and what they would be used for, I'm interested in seeing what happens with this BRAT project. We asked, we heard about it from Chief Hardy a month ago now, and we are kind of exploring ways to bring it about, right? So we've already said we're going to switch the funding that was going to contracted security to 2 of these positions. As I understand it, that's kind of that's ready to roll. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what we'd be looking at here is adding 2 more positions because those 2 contracted positions are basically replacing, private security that's been in some of our town facilities like the transportation center and the library. So adding these 2 other positions will give a greater scope to where those folks can work. And so I'm in favor of that. What I'm really concerned about is emergency appropriations to do that. And so I would like the board to seriously consider warning a special representative town meeting. I'm glad that Attorney Fisher brought up the town clerk's, general election kind of build-up. We do not want to kind of say to our town clerk, hey, can you do the general election? And also, would you mind doing a special RTM? So maybe the timeline is 30 days past, when's the election? November
5th.
5th, I should probably know. So 30 days past then, which puts us first week of December. And so what I'd want to hear from you folks is if RTM were to say, yes, we want to do this, we support this, right? That actually gives it much better buy-in. It's better for our democracy to do that. That would make the timeline for these folks being able to take on these roles. So talking about the BRAT folks, if we were to agree to it as a community in December, when would those folks be able to start work? Roughly. Again,
Well, now versus.
Oh, is he talking to me?
Yeah, I mean, I think like now is like if we did this tonight, those folks we've got people who've applied, we've got people who are interested. It would be a pretty quick process, right?
Right.
If we were to approve, if the RTM were to approve something in say like early December,
then we'd have to start over, because as soon as the select board decided that I could start the progress of adding BRAT, we were able to start interviewing people. We had quite a number of people from the area, from the town, quite a number of young people that applied for BRAT. And the whole process that they have to go through, because they have to have background checks, they have to have polygraphs, all of those take time to get, especially polygraphs, because this is also the time that people are trying to get people into the police academy for the level 3. So we have to compete against other departments, including state police, to get people in for their polygraphs, which is a part of the hiring process for BRAT also, because they got to be level 2.
Okay. And so these people that are, show an interest in the BRAT team, I keep calling it the BRAT team, but the T is team.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get the idea. When would they be working on our streets if we were to just go ahead and do that today?
If we did that today, I would probably have at least 2 of them ready within, I'd say, depending on polygraphs, probably within the next 2 months.
Okay. And then the other 2?
I would be able to do, well, right now we have 10 applicants. So in reality, I could probably have all 4 of them working within the next 2 months, as long as they passed all of their background qualifications.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief. The only other things I want to say on this topic are, we have this one Brattleboro group that is a collaboration between many social services and housing providers in our community and our public safety departments. It is something that I'm excited about. Elizabeth and I have been involved in it, and we have our next meeting in a couple of weeks' time. I think that project, can yield really powerful results in our community. It's a sort of collective impact model. There are other things that are going on as well that also are going to be helpful. The data project kind of feeds into that. And, just adopted this ordinance. We'll see how that goes. I want to kind of also name that we recently have 5 new officers on the team that are through all of their training, I believe, and are working on our streets. And so, as I understand it, that is that's a pretty significant addition to our force. Those folks are out in the community and doing good work. Yep. Okay. So, I'm pretty curious about I'm BRAT curious. The adding 3 new patrol officers, I don't, as an emergent expense, I don't know if I'm there with that. So John mentioned that there is a potential offset of $325,000. The cost of the BRAT folks is $350,000. Could be kind of a wash, potentially. I know that all kinds of things are unaudited and whatnot. So I just want to let the board know that that's kind of where I'm at on this. Liz and then Franz.
So I want to bring us back to the meeting where we first discussed adding downtown officers and the need and the BRAT team. And at that time, the motion before us was to add this within the regular budget process. Mm-hmm. But the good people of Brattleboro said, no, this is an emergency and we want this now. and we modified our vote, we modified the motion, and we unanimously chose to go ahead now. And if we're true to that vote, then we need to recognize that what we have is an emergency. And what we have is the ability to give everybody the go-ahead, give Chief Hardy the go-ahead to continue on her path, to get this in place by the end of the year, and to, have this as another set of tools in our toolbox with all the 12 other things and get it done. And I think that we have every right to authorize this spending now, consistent with our vote from a month ago.
The 20th, August 20th.
Yeah. And go forward. And I don't think we need to put the brakes on this. I think we need to go forward. And I'm all for this expenditure now, getting it authorized at town meeting.
Great. I just want to kind of, jump on one of those things that what we voted on the last time was, can you bring us back numbers? Right. We didn't have numbers. Mm-hmm. Now we've got numbers.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that that's clear for everybody.
And I'm content with the reality of these numbers, and I know I take the taxpayer burden very seriously, but I think this is a very serious matter, and there shouldn't be anything more important for the taxpayer than getting control of our community.
Okay, thank you. Franz?
Thank you, Daniel.
And then Richard, and then maybe
so I agree with what Liz was just saying, but maybe with a little bit of a different ending, because to me it's easy to justify expenditure on the BRAT team as meeting criteria for an emergency expense, but not so much for the 3 new patrol officers. I think that's something that, it's a longer time frame anyway, and I think that maybe should be something we wait on and do this in chunks. And definitely for anything affecting the FY26 budget, I don't see any reason to adopt that on an emergency basis. We're about to go into our budget process, and I would very much like to do this as part of that, rather than say it's something that we need to do in the middle of September, a year in advance. So anyway,
Just
I would...
The motion calls for to wait. The second half of the motion is to just add this number to the base budget for 2000.
Right, but I don't think we need to say that we are going to do that. We can take that as well as everything else that goes into the base budget. We don't have to say we want to see that as part of the FY26 budget, which is how I interpret that language. Maybe there was a different intent. But what I would prefer to do at this point is not authorize the $675,669 to go into the FY25 budget, but rather to reduce that to $350,392, which would take care of the BRAT team, and then to leave out the FY26 expenditures altogether and put that into next year's budget consideration. That would be my approach.
Okay, understood. I have a clarification from the town manager and then questions from Richard. John, do you want to say something?
Oh, sure, if you want.
And then I might come back to you and ask if you needed to make an emotion on that.
Yeah, I may want to.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so you asked, last time you asked for these cost numbers and a funding plan, which is what we brought you.
Yeah,
I would say two things. One, on the amount that we're saying to add it to the base budget for FY26, that would just be so that when we brought you the draft budget, it would already be incorporated. We would be signaling that these people we're hiring would be ongoing in the town budget, right, instead of bringing it as a budget alternate, as an option, as a possibility to include in the FY26 budget, instead just already incorporated into your thinking on an ongoing basis. That will help us with recruitment. That will help us with planning, basically. So.
Okay, helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Got it.
Richard?
In light of the fact that there's $325,000 available, and
potentially,
I think that an expenditure of $350,000, $392, would have almost no impact on the taxpayers. That I would like to see an amendment, whatever the language has to be relating to the budget, that we consider this BRAT team an emergent situation and make that expenditure now. That's pretty much consistent with what Franz said. So.
John? Thanks.
I understand what you're saying, and I would just ask Chief Hardy to address I know she explained it at your August 20th meeting, but perhaps if you could give us the thinking again, Chief, on the 3 patrol officers and how that fits together with the BRAT team, because I understand, I'm not sure how well you can be managing the BRAT team without those 3 officers, and I just want to make sure everyone has that understanding there before we make a decision to change that up or anything.
Okay, so the addition of the officers was something that we brought forth because of the fact that once we have these 5 individuals that will be dedicated to the downtown area, we will also have to dedicate an officer for them to have to be supervised by. They will be able to supervise themselves, and they won't have arrest powers, and they won't have, and they won't be armed. So we have someone that makes sure they follow the regulations, and if there is need for enforcement action, that uniformed officer will be the one taking that action. So that's why we incorporated those numbers. I also want to point out that if you decide to be able to pass for the BRAT and you delay the officers, that you I think I've said it before, but I just want to make clear what that entails. If you delay the hiring of the 3 officers now, which the next class for the academy is in February, so therefore that would, depending on when you decided to hire the officers, if we miss the February class, you're looking at those 3 officers being available to work for the town in 2026.
In the middle of 2026? Or?
In the middle of 2026, because they will have to go through background again, go through background investigation, which can take a long time. Even if whoever we hire, which I wouldn't think it would be the people that have applied for us right now. I feel like the people that are applying now for the police officer jobs are already in background process, so that we would have to delay that, which I don't see those people waiting for us because there are so many other departments that want police officers right now. So that's realistic. And also, if you don't hire the 3 officers now, then they would not go in until whenever you decided to hire them. So if it was the next academy class is in August, I believe. So from that, you would not have those officers until probably the summer of 2026. And that's only if you decide to hire them at all in 2025.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Board, these clarifications help you? Yep, Peter?
All right. So, again, with complete deference to the taxpayer, I get it. But somebody up here mentioned a flood, right? And if we had suffered another Irene-level event, we would not be discussing this at this breadth and depth. We would just be doing what we needed to do to bring our town back into some semblance of order and rebuilding. I don't feel that our situation is as dire as when Irene hit our town, but I feel that the expenditure of this money is still that necessary. So I just we are in a thing, we have had this conversation about, I can't tell you of the 500 plus conversations I've had, having a downtown substation has been like one of the number one things that has been told to me and to every member sitting at this table. I know you've all heard that same thing. So again, with hiring the way it is now, it's a really difficult market to find qualified people. Delaying that would just continue to, if you will, once again, kick that can down the road. And I just don't think we're in a position to do that.
Okay, thank you. We've heard a lot from the board. Let's hear from the public. So I'm going to go David, Kate, John, HB, and then we'll see where we're at.
David Levenbach, District 9. I have a couple of observations, and I had a question before, but now I just want to sort of ratify my my guess. One of my least favorite cliches, and I love cliches, is to say that a certain policy trend is unsustainable. Even so, if my math is correct, the proposed public safety expenditures for FY26 will result in a 4.3% increase in the municipal tax rate, and that assumes that FY26 budget is otherwise flat as compared to FY25. So that would be a 4.3% increase on top of the 4.4% increase in FY25. If there are increases in FY25 lines for FY26, I think the only way this works, otherwise we're in unsustainable land, is if there are equal cuts in current lines for FY26. And that would still mean that the municipal tax rate will have increased 9.25% from FY24 to FY26. This situation is aggravated by the prospect that there will be no fixes for the school funding problem, which has resulted in substantial increases in the school tax, a problem over which the Select Board has no control, but one that will result in real costs to the taxpayers. And the question I wanted to ask was what the percentage draw would be on our unaudited but anticipated fund balance. And my understanding from the colloquy was that it was something like 40%. Is that reasonable figure?
I don't know if we're ready to speak to that, David.
But, okay, that's a question to think about overnight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. I think I said Kate next. Kate?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I'm not going to speak to the program. I want to speak to the budget. And I really think that you folks have to think long and hard about it because it is going to have a substantial impact on the taxpayers of this town. There are so many unknowns right now. You're talking about using money out of the surplus when you don't even know if we have $675,000 to spend. In 2000 or the FY26 budget, you don't even have it yet. And now you're talking about putting $800,000 in a budget that you don't even have. Last year, the current year, FY25 budget was $955,000 over what you spent in 2024. That equated to the second highest tax increase in this town has seen in the last 8 years. So you think about it, $955,000 for the whole budget. Now you're asking to put $800,000 in for one line item. And I think it really is important. I want to stress what David just said. The taxpayers of our community, with what happened in the town taxes and the school taxes, we saw a percentage increase of over 15% in our property taxes last year. And I do think safety is important, but I also think the long-term affordability of this town is equally important. And if you want to talk about a flood, people are drowning in taxes. And I really, really think to make funding decisions right now, when you haven't even seen the 2026 proposed budget, is really kind of irresponsible. And I would also caution you, if you fund this for FY25, what's going to happen if it gets to town meeting and they say no? The program stops. So I think that's one point. So please, I would urge you, if you're going to think about this for FY26, please don't put it in the base budget. Keep it out so you can decide. Because I also agree with David, what are you going to cut? because we can't do everything in this town. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. John?
Once you go to Zoom, I don't really want to follow that.
Okay, fine. HB? HB?
Hey, everybody. HB Lozito, District 8. I always almost say District 2. I feel like, when Kate, my friend Kate O'Connor and I are on the same side of something, it's probably a good indicator that we're right. So I think, I consider myself an average homeowner for sure. I'm not interested in paying more property taxes for this. Honestly, it feels insulting to me to call this an emergency now. I think I and many others have been in this conversation with you all for many, many years, a really long time. And many of us have been screaming that this is an emergency for well over a decade. Our neighbors have been dying, folks are struggling, and you've used up the time you had to do something proactive. You had many solutions before you that were not punitive. Now that you've enacted this really ridiculous, hurtful, I'm shocked actually, ordinance, there are suddenly millions of dollars available to help support this work. I feel surprised and disappointed. I would ask you not to vote for it. I think at the very least it needs to go before RTM.
Thank you. John, do you want to speak? And then MD.
John Kennedy, Brattleboro, taxpayer. I, like others, am not in favor of more taxes, but I think this is something that we have to support. We've hired the chief of police. We've asked her to come up with recommendations for a situation that is a disaster. A month ago, she made the statement that what we've been doing isn't working. So we said, come back with ideas. She's come back with ideas. I think we need to support those ideas in total. And if it's $200 more in taxes, I look at that as an investment in this town, an investment in my property values, so that we maintain the kind of community that is attractive to people, and people want to shop here and they want to remain here. I mean, we've all had experiences with friends who say they don't want to come downtown and have dinner with us. They want to go to Greenfield. They want to go to Keene. That's the reality. And it's not just to beat us on the sales tax. They don't want to come down because of a lot of the problems downtown. So I'm here to say, please, pass this, support the chief, support her recommendations. We hired Kim a couple of years ago for her expertise. We don't tell her that we don't want to use the numbers she gives us because we don't like them. Follow the chief's recommendation. She's the expert. This is what she recommends. And I think the people of this town, the overwhelming number of people in this town, are going to pay this.
Thanks, John. I'm going to go to Mary Diane, and then Danny, and then Spencer, and then we'll see where we're at.
Hi, I'm Mary Diane Baker, and I live here in Brattleboro. I am a taxpayer. I'm aware of all those concerns. I am encouraged by the staff coming up with this offset, which has potential. I know it's not written yet as to what might be available, but to possibly apply to this. So the proposed costs for the resource team are a wise investment in further necessary expansion of mental health capacity for our town by addressing needs as they happen, when and where they happen, and they're happening multiple times every day downtown and other places around town. Quality of life will be encouraged or be improved for everyone. And I see that as an encouraging development, and say that we go with the BRAT team at least, and the whole program as it presented, because that's what's needed to support all of it.
Okay, thank you. Danny?
Danny Lichtenfeld, director of the Brattleboro Museum. I spend most of my waking hours in downtown Brattleboro, but I don't live in Brattleboro, and I don't pay taxes in Brattleboro, so I feel like it's not my place to speak to this, the question of funding this. What I did just want to say is that I have the highest regard for Chief Hardy and the police department, and I feel like if you can see fit to do this in whatever way it works, budget-wise and democracy-wise, I think you're really fortunate to have a plan developed by somebody so competent and thoughtful and effective. And I feel like, as someone who spends all my time in downtown Brattleboro, this would be a great development for all the things that many of us want to see happen. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Spencer, and then we'll hear from Cindy, and then we'll come back to the board for a little bit.
Yeah, Spencer Crisp. Yeah, I think Ms. O'Connor definitely made some very good points about the budget, but I'd just like to echo what Mr. Kennedy said, that the public safety concerns at this point supersede the budgetary concerns. Yes, that is definitely a concern, but the public safety concerns supersede it. I'm a Brattleboro resident, born here, I work downtown, and I fully support Chief Hardy and the Brattleboro Police and this plan, and echo everything Mr. Kennedy said. Very much support this. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Spencer. I don't know your name. I'm sorry, at the back of the room.
Hi, my name is Ashkan Hakel. I'm a resident of Brattleboro. I'm in grad school right now for counseling, and I got my undergrad in neuroscience, so I understand a bit about behavioral problems, which is what you keep referring to when you're talking about criminalizing homelessness. And you argue that you are not criminalizing homelessness, but you're using the closing of the motel programs as justifications to support this program, which is implying that homelessness is part of the problem. Decades of research show that we need more mental health support. I know that people in Brattleboro are not getting paid enough. They're overworked and they're burnt out in the field. If you have the money, yes, houselessness is an emergency. The incredibly high cost of rentals and the increasing cost of property driving houselessness is an emergency. But the way to deal with it is not criminalizing people's existence. And where are they supposed to go? Also, you say that you are taking a compassionate lens, but you are referring to people as being need to be cleaned up areas. What are they doing? Trashing people's tents and throwing away their items? People are not trash and they are not disposable. You also refer to them as a fire that needs to be extinguished. People do not need to be distinguished. I support life.
Thank you. Let's hear from Cindy on Zoom.
You're muted.
Hi, sorry, this is Cindy from Twice Upon a Time. I just wanted to say that I fully support the chief. We all do. I think that one of the ways that we keep talking about where we're going to get this tax money from, but I think something that's important to think about too is if we don't do this, where will the businesses be who are downtown now? Will they still be downtown supporting you? Will they still be giving you tax money? Because right now we have a lot of empty storefronts that could be bringing in tax revenue. And if we fix the problem now, not a homeless problem, but if we fix the crime problem now and make people feel safer, we can bring them back downtown and continue the revenue. We can make this tax money that we need to pay for the things that we need in the future. But right now, it's kind of the chicken before the egg. We're saying that we need one thing to have the other, but to have those tax dollars, don't we need to bring people back downtown to do so? And in order to do that, what do we need from the town in order to bring people back downtown? And I think safety is the biggest concern right now that keeps people from coming and shopping downtown.
Thanks, Cindy. Let's hear from Bethany, and then I'm going to see what the board wants to do.
Okay. There's so many little buttons you have to push.
Quick.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, there's so many buttons to push to unmute. I'm Bethany Ranquist. I am lifetime Brattleboro resident, parent of kids in Brattleboro. I'm also representing, I'm the vice president of the board at NEYT. lots of hats. I just, I first wanted to say that that's twice now that Danny has spoken up, and I have gone, yes, absolutely. So thanks to Danny for making points that I really deeply appreciate and agree with. And I just wanted to say that I think that there has been I have been hearing that there has been a noticeable deficit in downtown since we have not had the security option at the parking garage that I know that a lot of businesses were using for things like escorts to their cars or whatnot. And I really deeply appreciate Chief Hardy's commitment to trying to figure out ways that we can increase support in Brattleboro. I love the idea of the Brat. I don't want to speak to the property tax issue. And I hear what people are saying about RTM, and it's super nuanced, and I get that. But I also think that there have been a number of us who have been saying for quite some time now that there is a serious need for help in the downtown Brattleboro area in order for businesses and organizations to keep functioning. And I worry that the longer that items get put off, the worse that situation is going to get, similar to what Cindy was saying. So I don't know that comment necessarily helps much at all. I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Hardy for the work that she's doing. Thanks to Danny for voicing my points. And I appreciate a lot of really hard conversation that you guys are having this evening. And I also just want to say that I just personally, as I'm listening to it, I don't think that anybody in the room there or on Zoom is coming at this problem with a lack of heart or a lack of empathy or a lack of compassion. I think where there is big passion and big emotion, it's an indication of big love for whatever the topic is. And in this case, I think it's a great love for our town. And then we all are trying our best to figure out how to best go about fixing a really significant problem. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I see the hands, and I'm going to bring it back to the board. We're about an hour behind schedule, and we actually have a presenter waiting in the wings for our next item. Can we turn off the air conditioning? Somebody can maybe help with that. I am not skilled enough. So, board, what is your pleasure here? We have a motion on the floor to implement this plan with an unbudgeted expense of $675,669. Franz.
I'd like to amend the motion, please.
Okay.
And the amendment would be to change the amount that we're allocating to $350,392, and I'd like to speak to my amendment, please.
Yep. Okay. Go right ahead.
There's a lot to think about here. These are, new ideas to me. I mean, first numbers I saw certainly were Friday of last week, and as I said before, I think we do need to go ahead as quickly as possible with the BRAT team. I don't think that the justification for an emergency expenditure beyond that is nearly as convincing. And, even with the 3 new patrol officers, even if we put that in motion right now, it would be next summer before those officers were available. So there's going to be an appreciable time when we have the BRAT team in place without those 3 officers. Clearly, we're going to do something in that time interval that's productive and constructive. I think there will be workarounds for not having those officers to supervise the BRAT team in the way that this envisions. But really, my point is, I don't think we need to make that decision tonight. There's going to be a delay on those officers. If we have a little more time to look at the numbers, hear from our constituents, I'm not comfortable with declaring that an emergency. I am, however, comfortable with saying we should spend that $353.92 on the BRAT team now.
Got it. Okay, so Franz has moved to amend the motion so the FY20, the immediate expenditure would go from $675,669 to $353.92. Let's hear more discussion on that motion. Liz?
I'm not in favor of Franz's motion. I am in favor of the motion, the original motion, and Chief Hardy's plan, because I think that the 3 new patrol officers are an integral part of this program. And as Chief Hardy said when it was first discussed, that she thinks it's an innovative idea to have a dedicated, round-the-clock presence downtown. I agree with her. I think many people in the room agree with her. And we need the whole package. Okay. And so I'm in favor of the original motion.
Great. Any more discussion on Franz's amendment, or are we ready to vote on it?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Liz said. I mean, in knowing how difficult it is to hire people, knowing how we have to, it's almost near aggressive to get quality people in and then get them through. I know the 5 officers that are currently hitting our streets now. I remember having those conversations about them being interviewed well over a year ago. And so how long it takes to get them onboarded is something we really need to consider.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other discussion, Richard? No? Are we ready to vote on it? Looks like it. Okay, so Francis made a motion to amend the original motion, which was about the Downtown Safety Action Plan. His amendment is that we would have an immediate emergency expenditure of $350,392, and then the rest of the motion is as it was originally.
Would you perhaps
do you want me to read the whole thing?
Because it may contradict what I...
So the amendment is to move to direct the town manager to continue implementing the Downtown Safety Action Plan as amended with an estimated cost of $350,392 for the emergent unbudgeted expenditures in FY25, and with an estimated $803,459 added to the base budget for FY26. Okay? All right.
Now I'm confused.
Yeah, so go ahead and ask your question.
Why are we including that 803,000 if we're just amending to?
Well, that's all the amendment that Franz made. Franz just amended the current year expenditure.
Because I'm accepting that we're not actually approving that as part of the FY26 budget, but how it will be presented to us for action when we do get to the FY26 budget.
And
so we're not saying that that's included in the FY26 budget. We're just saying that when it comes to us, it'll be in the base budget and not in the additional choices that...
So the current expenditure is only the 350.
Yeah, right. So he's saying he doesn't want to spend 675, wants to spend 350. Okay. Everyone clear on that motion? All right. All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Nay. 3 opposed. So the motion fails. We want to go back to the original motion that Peter made?
Sure.
Yes.
Or do we need to discuss it anymore?
I've heard everything I need to hear.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so the motion is to direct the town manager to continue implementing the Downtown Safety Action Plan as presented with an estimated cost of $675,669 for the emergent unbudgeted expenditures in FY25, and with an estimated $803,459 added to the base budget for FY26. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
2 opposed. It passes 3-2. We're going to move on to our next item of business, which is an update from Turning Point and discussion of their initiatives. Thank you so much, Chief Hardy, Kim Frost.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Christine is going to join us. It is 9:20, basically. We are way past our bedtime. So when Christine's ready, we'll hear a presentation. Well, we're past my bedtime, I've got to tell you. Christine, come over to the table. I'll give you a second to collect yourself. I'll do some place setting, and then we'll maybe do a little time check and make a plan.
Hi, y'all.
Hi, Christine. So we are quite far behind schedule.
No.
I really want to hear from you. I know that the rest of the board and the community does as well. I think we had originally budgeted for 35 minutes for your presentation.
I can wrap it up in 10.
I say 35 for the whole thing, right? So presentation, discussion, questions. So if we do that, that's going to put us at 9:55, and that is quite a late hour. Do you think you can sort of do a presentation?
I'll give it my best go. I have a cold. Pair that with menopause, and let's giddy up and go.
Okay. All right, giddy up.
Let's do this.
Daniel?
Franz.
Point of privilege.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I really want to hear everything that Christine has to say. I think this may be the most important part of the evening, even if it's not the most contentious.
Okay.
And I really would hate to miss out on the important information she has to offer.
Let me reveal behind the scenes what I'm also considering. That item C is something that I know that many people have labored over to bring to us for tonight's meeting, and what we're in danger of right now is tabling that for another meeting.
I'm willing to accept that.
Very well.
That's my perspective.
Okay. Christine?
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining us. Maybe you'd like to introduce yourself for anyone that doesn't know who you are.
Hi. Sorry. I hope I don't cough too much. I'm Christine Allen. I'm the Executive Director for Turning Point of Windham County. For those of you who do not know where we're located, we're on Flash Street. We're 39 Flash Street. We're that big yellow house that kind of, for a long time, just looks like it's been like this empty yellow building. We have changed our hours. I started in March, late March. We used to operate 10 to 3, and staff was sort of working from home a lot. We were without an executive director for just over 2 years. So once I came on board, we decided to go back to the 9 to 5 hours, have all staff on site, and just drastically make some changes to the dynamic of how we were operating so that we could serve our community in the best way possible in a super meaningful way. It is late. It is past my bedtime. I'm super sorry. I'm going to try and go through all of the things that we do in a really smooth manner, but if it's choppy, I apologize in advance. I do get asked a lot, what do you do? And it is really a very complex answer because we really do so much. So I'm just going to sort of run through all of the things that we actually do. First of all, you know, one of the things that we do at Turning Point is we take a really holistic approach to addiction and recovery. I want to just declare that we are a recovery center first and foremost. We are not a drop-in center. We are not a homeless shelter. We are a recovery center. What does that mean? That means we take folks, we welcome anybody. We take folks who are not in addiction. We take folks that are recovering from trauma, substance use, sex addiction, gambling, you name it. We've got a group for you, literally. But since we're talking about substance use and alcoholism, mostly those are the folks that we deal with, and those are the topic of conversation, for most of these meetings. Folks come in to our center, and many of them are in active addiction, and many of them are absent. Many of them are working on their recovery. But recovery is different for everybody, right? So for somebody, it might be complete abstinence. For somebody else, it might be, I'm thinking about recovery. I'm really thinking about it, but I'm just not ready yet. Okay, great. Keep coming back. Let's keep having this conversation. Come see us every single day. Spend 8 hours a day here with us. We're going to have lunch. We're going to chit chat. We're going to have a little fire pit. We're going to go to a group. Maybe we'll go for a walk. We'll do all of these things. We're just going to chit chat with you. And we're going to keep you safe until we close down. And hopefully we're going to see you back tomorrow. But we're going to constantly be talking about recovery and modeling that behavior, modeling what it looks like for the individual, and supporting the individual, meeting that person where they're at. And we're going to talk about fun things. We're not going to be talking about the doom and gloom of every single day. We have a pool table at the center, and we also have our Adventures in Recovery, which I'm squirreling, so I'll get to that in a little bit. But I just want to be very clear that the folks that we serve, many of them are in active addiction. Many of them are in recovery themselves. I'm not going to ask for questions. We can burn that bridge later.
We'll have plenty of question time after.
So we have an RCED program, which is the Recovery Coaching in the Emergency Department program. So we're sort of embedded in Grace Cottage and also the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. What that means is we've really partnered up with both of the emergency departments. So let's say Billy Bob goes into Grace Cottage. He's at ground zero of his life. He is in the the depth of his addiction, and he just really needs some help. Grace Cottage will call us and say, can you send up a recovery coach? Absolutely. We get in the car, we head on up there. We do the advocacy, we do the support, we meet the individual where they're at, that we stay with them for as long as possible. We support them while they're at the emergency room, and then we're cultivating that relationship. We're building that trust. We're showing up with a trauma-informed mentality, and we're making sure that we're meeting the needs of that individual. What do you need? Creating this relationship. We're not making demands. We're not pushing treatment. We're not pushing to send them to a sober living house or this, that, and the other. We're asking them what do they need for support so that we can start creating this bond with them so that when they leave the emergency room, they know about Turning Point. And then hopefully they're going to call us. We're going to call them, but hopefully they call us and say, hey, remember you guys said you had a meeting? What time was it? Hey, it's at 11 o'clock. We'll see you then. Or do you need a ride? Can we help you with a ride? Whatever it takes to help get that individual to our center so that we can start having those conversations about recovery. Again, we have our relationship with Brattleboro Memorial Hospital and also Grace Cottage. Our relationship with them is 7 days a week, 9 to 5. We also have our offsite coaching program. Offsite coaching is a little different. It's a really huge program with us at Turning Point. We have 3 full-time offsite coaches. We literally go wherever the individual is, whether it's under a bridge, in a tent, in the woods, at Groundworks, Great River Terrace, the chalet, you name it, we go there. We literally get in our car and go everywhere we could possibly go to meet somebody that's in need. If we don't hear from that individual for a couple of days, we're out, we're looking for those people. So we are dialed in and locked into where all of the people are that we serve. And by the way, the individuals that we serve in our offsite coaching program, we have about 160 folks that we serve monthly that have recovery coaches. So when you have a recovery coach, you're spending time with that individual on a weekly basis. So you have a weekly scheduled 1-hour appointment with the recovery coach, but you're checking in with that person. We're going and we're supporting that individual with food insecurities. Are they pregnant? Do they need additional supports? Do they need, what do they need to get to their appointments? Are they thinking about treatment? Can we help get them to a treatment center? So we're really building these relationships with the individual, helping them find a job, et cetera, et cetera. We're just another resource for the individual. We're a shoulder to cry on. Everything that you could possibly imagine. I sort of think about recovery coaching as more case management. I'd love to think that we're not. I'd love for everybody to stay in their lanes, but as all of us that work in the human services field know, it's just impossible. So we kind of do the whole gamut while we're serving as a recovery coach. It's just impossible to not serve everyone. We have a families program, which I absolutely love. Someone who's grown up in an alcoholic household, thinking it was completely normal for your dad to throw the TV out the window when you got upset. I grew up in a really hostile, really just dysfunctional household. I had no idea that it was normal for folks to sit down and have your silverware laid out and nice pretty napkins. I didn't know that until I was adult and started to go to friends' houses. I didn't know that other people didn't have brothers and sisters that were addicted to drugs and heroin. I just thought that was a thing. I just had no idea. Point being, growing up in that environment, it just really hits home for me. It is my hope and dream that no child has to really go through that alone. So the families program for me is just so critically important so that we can be there for the child. So the families program is all encompassing, right? So we have someone who really supports the individual who's working on their recovery, and we have someone who's there for the entire family. We have someone who's there for the child. And then we can mix and match it. Child is having a hard time with dad, let's get the two of them together in a room. Child's having a hard time with the brother, let's get the two of them in a room. Whatever the dynamic is amongst the family is what we'll do to help support that entire family. And of course, we always want to get the whole family together so that we can work on the whole family dynamic. One of the real pivotal times for me growing up was when my sister, my brother, and my dad all ended up in rehab together. Well, not together, but separately, but all at the same time. And my mom and I just sat there it was like Christmas, and we just sat there and we didn't speak to each other. But it was the most beautiful moment because there was no yelling, there was no stress, and we just looked at each other and we were like, you want to go get some tea? Like, it was like, let's go do something like just for us. It was amazing. And to have that peace and harmony, even if it was just temporary, was a magical moment for me. And it was a blessing. And my mom and I we really knew it was such short-lived, but we knew what we had in that moment. And we want to be able to share that with everybody. We also want, we want to be able to help these families that are trying to get reunification with their children to understand that folks, agencies like DCYF, they're not the enemy. The police, they're not the enemy. So we really try and help foster those relationships. We're actually, we just had probation and parole over at the center, and that was a little awkward, but we worked through it. And we had to kind of like work through those kinks of like, hey, can't be calling people out at my center. Like, what are you thinking here? Like one of the ladies walked in and she's like, oh, I see two people that really should be in court. I'm like, you absolutely will not be addressing those individuals right now. Like, you could do it like in 25 minutes up the road, but don't you dare do that right here, right now. This is the safe zone. So we're just trying to work out how can we help create this relationship and take the fear out of all of these other agencies and, police and fire and all that jazz. Am I going too quick?
We listened fast.
You good.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to miss something, but our day program. So, let's rewind a little bit back to like January, February, March. We had maybe 10, 12 people coming to our center per week. Now we're literally serving 500 people per month. We have not increased our staff. I have no idea how we're able to serve 500 people per month, but we're doing it and we're making magic happen. We have 21 groups that we have per week on our calendar. I have plenty of reading material for anybody. If you'd like any bathroom material, here it is right here for you. But it also has our calendar, so it showcases all of the groups that we have. And again, recovery is not all about the doom and gloom. Like, we have tea time on here. So what we're trying to do is get folks that are all like in similar situations in a room together just to talk about your day to day. We don't have to be talking about our recovery journey every second of the day. Our all recovery meeting is absolutely magical. It's every day at 11 a.m. We usually have between 22 and 25 people come for that meeting from all walks. We've got some folks that are in recovery from trauma, mostly addiction, a lot of folks that are in active addiction, and many who are in active recovery. And the collaboration and the support that you see in the room, it's nothing shy of a miracle. So I'm literally seeing and witnessing miracles every single day. It's beautiful, it's magical, and it warms my heart, and it's what keeps me motivated. If I didn't have to pay my mortgage, I'd be like, I'll do this for free. I'm just kidding. It's not ever going to happen. Acupuncture. We have acupuncture every Tuesday at 12:15. And you know what's really great about that is people who have no idea about who we are, what we are, they hear that we have acupuncture and suddenly they're showing up. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I love it here. What can I do? I'm like, you can volunteer. Show up here tomorrow. Let's get you going, right? Like, we are always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people to come and help and support our mission. We have women's recovery. We have a veterans group. So when you have a moment, I'm not going to go through everything, but please take a moment. If you have a veteran who's suffering, if you know anybody, we literally have a group for everybody. So please take this and share it. So I'll move on from that. Sober living. Our next goal is to create a sober living environment. There's a lot of talk about treatment. We all know that treatment in the state of Vermont is like not up to par, right? I come from the state of New Hampshire, so I'm used to having 30, 40 days of treatment. It is not, 14 days of treatment is absolutely not going to cut it. I have a hard time sending people to treatment on 14 days because it scares the heck out of me knowing that they're going to come home and then they're going to use and then we're going to be Narcaning them 3-4 times just to bring them back. And it's just, yes, sir.
The 14 days is due to the restrictions on Medicaid payments?
It's a Medicaid issue, yes. And we can't solve that. Our select board can't solve that problem. But what we can do is try and help our local community, right? Like, that's a bigger issue than what we can handle right now. We all know it's a problem. We all know that we need to do the very best that we can to help be a part to fix it. But we're not going to solve it at this table.
Can they be sent down to state?
No.
I'm sorry. Thanks.
So with Medicaid, with the state of Vermont, it's in the state of Vermont. So there's only a couple of resources that they can go to, and it's just not a pretty picture. So oftentimes, what we see, with those of us that work in the field see is those that really want the rehab, many of them are homeless. They have Medicaid. They go for a 14-day treatment. They come back, and man, they try like hell to stay clean. And maybe they'll make it 3 weeks, maybe. And then it's right back to ground zero again. And it is so painful for us to watch and experience. And I know that you can't ask questions, so I'm going to pretend I'm not seeing the look on your face.
There'll be time for questions when you're done.
Okay. So nonetheless, there's just recently been, I just notified the board of this morning, but there's recently been a law that passed through legislation that would allow me to open an 8-bed unit. And you can stop me from talking if I'm out of line here. But it's an 8-bed unit. It would be run like a single family resident. But the reason I have had pause on opening the 2 beds that I have been allowed to open is our building on 39 Flat Street, it does not have a proper sprinkler system, and we're not tied into the fire department with our, help me out. Thank you. So we're not tied into the fire department. But this new legislative clause would allow me to act as if we are a single family occupancy, which means that literally tomorrow I could, assuming everybody's on board with this, open an 8-bed sober living facility. I've got 2 board members here. I'm just like praying to God that they're like, yeah, let's do it. But I also don't have a shower, so I need somebody in this room to volunteer to install a shower tomorrow, which would be really helpful. Chris, thank you for volunteering. Okay, I just signed you up, Chris. Thank you for that. So that's really what our next goal is. Now, that being said, let's just assume this is a perfect world and I'm able to open up a sober living facility with 8 beds next month, right? I still need to find a new location to house our day program, to house our staff, and to have individual meetings for all of the individuals that we serve. We serve, up to 200 people on a monthly basis in our one-on-one coaching sessions. So I'm going to be hitting the select board up pretty hard for a location that's very close to 39 Flat Street. Of course, I would love some space in the transportation center, but that's another conversation that I don't want to bug you guys with today, but I just want to put the bug in your ear nonetheless. But that being said, I am definitely going to be needing some space. The reality is this is an epidemic. The problem is not going away. We at Turning Point are doing everything we can to be a part of the solution and not get caught up in all of the this isn't working, that's not working, and da-da-da-da-da. Like, we know it's a problem. One of our mottos at Turning Point is we have compassionate accountability. And just to be really clear, Peter quoted me that I said last week, or the last board meeting, some of these people need a good swift kick in the ass. That was me. He was just quoting me. And I know that sounds really insensitive, but my personal feeling on this is sometimes we don't really have the time to be super sensitive. Now, again, I just want to clarify this. We have already, with all of the individuals that we serve, we've already gone through the trauma-informed. We've already built a relationship. We've already fostered and developed trust. So we know who these people are, right? So now they're like family to us. We're hugging. We're telling each other we love each other when they walk out our door, because I know damn well there's a chance I might not see them ever again. Literally, I might not ever see this person again. So I'm going to say, hey, you matter to me. I love you. Have an amazing night. I'll see you tomorrow. And I make sure we have eye contact. Will I see you tomorrow? Yeah, I'm going to see you tomorrow, right? Yes, I'll see you tomorrow. And so I put hope and possibility into them before they walk away, even if they were a total jackass 25 minutes ago. Right? And and that's the reality, because sometimes they are jerks. Sometimes they don't abide by our rules. But the bottom line is we are the end of the line. Turning Point is the end of the line. The chances are when they come to our center, if we are going to have to no trespass somebody from our center, chances are they've already been no trespass from pretty much every other area agency that they could go to. So the last thing in the world we want to do is no trespass anyone from our center. So what we do is we have like a 7-day rule. We're like, listen, you're going to have to take a break from the center for 7 days. So we don't go beyond 7 days. And 9 times out of 10, they're very respectful. They understand and they apologize. And they're like, look, I own it. I'm sorry. That's where that compassionate accountability comes in. And then when they come back in 7 days, we sit down together, we draw up a contract, and it's like, you agree to not do these things again. And I agree that I'm going to hold you accountable to the things that you're telling me you're not going to do. And let's move forward and be amazing together. And then we wipe it under the rug, we move forward, and then the next time it happens, we do it all over again. But that's that compassionate accountability that we hold them accountable for. And we do a lot of education. I keep looking at the clock. I have no idea what time it is. That we have this.
Maybe in a couple of minutes.
Tell me when to stop talking, because I'm just going to keep going until you tell me to stop. I just wanted to point out, like someone said earlier, that we're attacking symptoms and not the problem. My personal opinion is I think that we are really addressing the problem. But I do believe that one of the things that we talk a lot about the center is a lot of the individuals that come to the center, they complain a lot about the community, right? They're jerks. They don't know what's going on. They don't care. It's like, you know what? They really do care. So we're sort of like the liaison between the user and the community, right? They're angry because you're not being respectful of the space. Like, I literally, had to clean up human waste this morning and 27 needles. I get angry. It gets frustrating. It's annoying. So I will be like, look, y'all, whoever's like taking a dump behind Turning Point, can you please stop? And stop with the needles, so we're having real conversations with these people. We're talking on their level, I'm not gonna be like, can we please stop defecating out back? I'm like, y'all, enough already. Come on. And they appreciate that. And that's part of that whole being trauma informed, is meeting the individual where they're at, having real talk in real time on their level and at their speed with what they're ready for. Roger that? Makes sense? Yeah? So that I feel safe and comfortable saying, y'all are screwing this up. This isn't working. Okay. I'm sorry that I've gone over.
No, that's great. You actually didn't, but that sounds like a good stop in place.
I feel like I missed a lot, but I'm sorry.
Board members, questions, comments? Liz?
I just have a comment. Christine, I appreciate your work so much. I think we all do. I have a tremendous amount of respect for, I've been to the center and think you guys are doing a great job, and I'm supporting sober living in your space.
Thank you.
I do think you need to find another location besides the transportation center.
That's kind of the rumor on the street, but I'm not going to give up until all of you tell me at the same time.
And given that that's not what's warned on the agenda, we're not going to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? France?
Yeah. Thank you, and I just want to point out how awesome your staff members are as
They're
well.
pretty amazing.
It's really just coming down there, being in the center. It just feels great, and so I look forward to hearing more. The sober living, I think, is just critically important. It's
critical.
What we need. Not just sober housing, but also sober activity centers. I don't know how we get there, but that's the kind of thing that I hope we'll be talking to you about some more.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Other board members? Richard? And then Peter?
I appreciate everything you're doing. It's amazing. Is your financing pretty solid?
We're paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, we're tight. We're on a very, very, very tight budget. We have $675,000 for absolutely everything. We're working on securing some other grants and funding, but there's a lot to do in a very short period of time. I just came on in March, and there's not enough time in the day to do what we need to do.
Would you have enough money to do the 8-bed thing if you wanted to?
The 8-bed situation, yes, we would charge for that. We would charge individuals for the sober living house. I'm hoping that we'd be able to get maybe $500 a month or maybe $400 a month out of each individual. There's a tier process to that. Sober living is pretty complex. It's not just like move in and have a nice day. There's a tremendous amount of accountability. urine tests, medications, curfews, et cetera, et cetera. So we would have a sober living manager that would live on site who would be responsible for the house. That person would not pay rent, but that person would really manage all of the individuals. I'm not going to say the next piece that I'm thinking, but we need a location that's close to downtown. I do know somebody who's in real estate that could support the location that I want to be very close. So I have a plan B if you folks are unable to accommodate my needs and my ask. I do have a plan B, and I'm certain that you folks won't like it, but it is as it is.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Was just going to echo what everybody else is saying. Support the work you're doing. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. I really appreciate y'all coming down. It means a lot. I know that our people love it. Really love it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
So I appreciate the presentation, and let's see what members of the public would like to ask you. And I'm going to remind members of the public if you could direct your questions this way. Okay. Penelope, would you like to come to the microphone? I know that it feels very intimate right now, but we also have quite a lot of people on Zoom and watching on TV.
Christine, I have thought...
And Penelope, if you would direct your question this way.
It's Penelope and I have a shop downtown.
And if you direct your...
Yeah, oh, sorry, yes. I just wanted to say to Christine that I've thought about this a lot, about trying to reach out to the people who are on the street and discuss with them what is the right behavior, because we, whenever I talk to them and ask, I shouldn't be calling them. I would like to find a better word for that. When I talk to people who are unhoused, or when I talk to people who are on the street doing behavior which I don't think is appropriate, and I ask them not to do it, and I treat them very humanely, they listen. I think you have to accept the fact that we're all adults together. And I do think that Christine could help our situation a lot, because if you can take some of the things that we're having to deal with every day and talk to the people who you have with you and explain to them how we are feeling. We're just about to come into our busiest time of year, if you're a shopkeeper right now. Mm-hmm. Autumn, Christmas, this is when we probably make about a third of our income, or maybe more than that, maybe half our income. And to have the people downtown just understand how important it is for us to have the customers coming down, and to understand that we respect them if they respect us, and understand what is respectable behavior. And panhandling is a real big issue.
Thanks, Penelope.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Christine? Spencer?
Is the comment okay?
Yep.
Just want to say thank you. That was super cool what you're doing. And, we talk about there's been so much negative stuff that we have been having to deal with. And when you see, something positive like this that makes a difference, it's it's one of the many things I love about Brattleboro. That's sweet. And so, I just think of the Shawshank Redemption, when Morgan Freeman says, get busy living or get busy dying. And when people decide that they want to get busy living, and you're there to help brighten that, and to be an ally and a teammate and show love to help them reach their potential and get on their feet and live a healthy life, live up to their potential, that's one of the most beautiful things ever. And so I think, I just want to say it's super cool what you're doing, and it's a great thing for Brattleboro. That's awesome.
Thanks, Spencer. All right, we've got a couple of hands on Zoom.
Can I just reply to him real quickly? Would that be okay?
Sure.
A lot of the folks in the community really see the ugly of the folks that are in active addiction, but when they come to our center, we do take a lot of pictures, And if you take some time and you look through our newsletter, you'll see some of the folks, you'll recognize some of the faces, and you'll see smiles, and you'll see hugs, and you'll see hope and possibility in some of these pictures. And it will give you a different perspective of the folks that are on the streets in active addiction. And again, when I say that we see miracles every single day, I'm not kidding about that. That's not just fluff. Like, that's reality. And because we've built these relationships with these people, they do open up, and we get to capture those moments. And it really is very beautiful. So I do encourage everyone to stop by our center and just hang out, just be.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple more people with questions on Zoom. I can't read the names from here. Sue, if you take that first one on the left.
It's Alicia.
Alicia, okay. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Val. I'm an area resident, homeowner, and taxpayer. Hi, I've been riveted this whole time. I know it's almost 10 and we all go to bed at 8. But I did want to say specifically, as a person who's been unhoused before and who has gotten to be in a situation now where I am housed again, that grip is really tenuous. And how much you pay people and how much you expect them to pay for a cost of living has a huge impact on that. And I cannot, in good conscience, condone any organization that wants to have people who are addicted and living on the street pay $400 or $500 to house them and then monitor their every move and comings and goings. I appreciate all of the work and support, and I fully agree that what Christine is offering is more than Brattleboro has offered for the most part in terms of the people who are in greatest need. However, part of the problem is that we already require people to pay for their existence. And one of their biggest issues is that they can't. And if you are not going to solve that problem, asking them to pay money for sober housing isn't going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Can I respond to that?
You can. Let's keep it civil.
Yeah. So you're not wrong about that. I hear you, and I agree with you. The problem is the state of Vermont doesn't have a solid plan for folks that leave a rehabilitation center and go to like an IOP plan and then a PHP, IOP inpatient or inpatient or outpatient, hospitalization or a partial hospitalization program. Like, we don't have those things already established. So, we just are lacking all of the services all around. So what we're doing is trying to fill in some gap, some way, somehow to help in a way that we're capable of doing so. We can only do so much. We're offering sober living, and we can't sustain our budget. We are literally paycheck to paycheck. So what we're offering is a tier program. So Jane Doe comes in freshly in her recovery journey. For the first 3 months, she's not paying rent. She's going to focus solely on her recovery, go to meetings, get connected with the community, focus solely on her recovery. 3 to 6 months, we're going to talk about how you're feeling. Maybe you can get a part-time job. Maybe you can pay $100 a month. How does that look, feel, sound? Okay, great. $100 it is. 6 to 9 months, what are you looking at? 9 to 12 months, okay, we're going to expect you to pay $400 a month because on 12 months you're out on your own, sister. So we got to figure this out. This is where that compassionate accountability comes in, and this is where we need to put our big girl and big boy pants on and help these folks get back into society. Like, we don't have a lot of time to mess around. We have 1 year.
Thanks, Christine. Doran?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Doran. Hi, my name is Doran Ham. I am a Brattleboro resident. I've lived downtown for 11 years. I was born and raised. I'm a teacher. I teach on Flat Street at the New England Youth Theater. I also own a small business downtown. I'm a massage therapist. I just want to say, I think the most shocking thing, Turnpoint is incredible. And I feel so grateful to have them as neighbors down on Flat Street. B, I think it just is astonishing that they're talking about going paycheck to paycheck with a budget, which is almost the same amount that you just passed to hire more police officers. It's like you could have a second turning point almost for the cost of the budget that was just passed. And they're the ones that are directly helping get people off the street instead of just hiring more people to push people out. So I think it's astonished. I just would love the select board to go back to the table and see about how can continue to like give more budget to Turning Point, because Turning Point is doing everything. Not that the town's not doing anything, but that Turning Point is really on the front lines, and they're the ones that need all the support possible. Thank you.
Darn. Okay, I think I saw one hand in the room, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. Ava, again, I live in Westminster. I work in Brattleboro. I'm actually an outreach worker for Groundworks. I speak for myself, but I'm on the street every day with the folks, the homeless folks, the addicts who we're talking about regularly. And I am really glad to see that you're all really excited about Turning Point. I'm really excited about Turning Point. I see lately that I can't find my folks because they've been trespassed from public spaces, and I'm glad to see that some of them are ending up at Turning Point, but some of them are ending up in the basement of Sportsman's Lounge because there's not public bathrooms. I'm just going to wrap on those same points, so I won't continue with that. But what I will say is that, I'm really excited that you're excited about Turning Point, and that's the direction that we're asking you to steer in. Because again, more police and more citations. Some of my clients have upwards of thousands of dollars in citations and criminal records that is not going to allow them to get back into society without a ton of legal fees and like all sorts of things. And I'm just one person. I'm a case manager. I can't navigate that myself. We need whole teams for the criminal justice complex that is happening for these people. A lot of these folks are going to need a lot of support, and adding police infractions, they're not going to pay their fines. They're not going to be able to show up for restorative justice plans. They're going to get criminal infractions. And then they're going to miss their court dates, and then they're going to get arrest warrants. And it was because they were drunk on the street one day, and then they won't get housed for another 5 years. Let's think about Turning Point. Let's think about more options like Turning Point and not more policing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ava. Okay, so folks, it is 9:56, and I am thinking that it's time to start wrapping this up. So, Christine, thank you so much for coming. I know that there'll probably be some further times where we meet. I look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you so much.
Board, we have another item on our agenda that I would request that we table for our next meeting. It is consideration of an acceptable community conduct campaign. Can you get with me on that, or are you interested in having a 45-minute long conversation right now?
I think we should do the full hour.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm up.
Thanks, Peter. I'm also thinking about our ASL interpreters and our town staff.
For them.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you then.
Do we
Thank
need
you.
to have a motion to table?
Yeah, let's
or
have a
just-
motion to table it. Who wants to make that motion?
I move that we table this item for our next regular scheduled meeting.
Great. Les has made a motion to table.
Does that mean Thursday? Or does
No,
that mean
the regular
schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. 1st of October. Liz
Shall
made
we
a motion-
vote on the motion?
Yes, Liz made a motion to table this item until such a time. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so then that brings us to one final motion. Who wishes to make that? Peter.
No.
Oh, Elizabeth.
I move to adjourn.
Elizabeth has made a motion to adjourn. It's not debatable. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you so much to BCTV, our ASL interpreter team. Thank you to members of the town staff, members of the public, and all of the participants tonight. Hope you have a good evening. Especially Sue Fillion, pinch hitting on the Zoom. Thank you for no Zoom bombing.